Hi, how you guys doing?
Good. I'm on a Zoom call. Yeah. Go ahead. You can close that door if you want. Thanks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Campbell City Council, Tuesday, February 22nd. I call this meeting to order. It is in compliance with the telecommunications provisions of the Brown Act and Executive Order N29-20 issued by the governor. This city council meeting is being live streamed on channel 26, the city's website, and YouTube. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Bybee.
Present.
Councilwoman Landry.
Present.
Councilmember Lopez.
Present.
Vice Mayor Resnikoff.
Here.
Mayor Gibbons.
Here, thank you very much. At this time, I would like all to stand at attention and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this portion of the meeting, we would have special presentations and proclamations. There are none this evening. Communications and petitions. There are no communications and petitions this evening. And Madam City Clerk, do we have any oral requests at this time?
We do. We have Ken Johnson.
All right, I will read this notice and then please bring Ken on. Note, this portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the City Council on any matter not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the council are requested to ask to register. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. The law generally prohibits the council from discussion or taking action on such items. However, the council may instruct staff accordingly regarding oral requests. And if
Can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Ken.
Great, thank you. Well, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Ken Johnson, Executive Director with the Campbell Chamber of Commerce. I wanted to touch base tonight and let you know that the Campbell Chamber Community Foundation has met and selected a Citizen of the Year and 3 Business of the Year finalists, and I'd like to acknowledge them if that's okay right now. The Citizen of the Year, selected by a committee made up of past winners and various other prominent people within the community, selected Armin J.R. McKee as Citizen of the Year. And if you know JR, you know he's always giving so much to the community, and particularly this year with COVID, just a real honor to recognize everything he's done for so many years for the city of Campbell. And then we selected 3 finalists for Business of the Year. We'll announce the winner at Celebrate Campbell on March 20th. The 3 finalists for Business of the Year are Sports Basement, Orchard Valley Coffee, and Marvel Cakes. 3 outstanding businesses here in the community. And again, we'll announce the winner at our virtual Celebrate Campbell on Saturday, March 20th. And that will be available on Zoom and also live on the Chamber's Facebook page. So congratulations to JR and our 3 finalists for Business of the Year. And thank you to the city for your continued support for all the businesses here in Campbell.
Thank you, Ken. That is a marvelously wonderful announcement to be made, and thanking all the members of the Campbell Chamber Foundation for continuing this great tradition. Congratulations to JR and all of the business finalists. Thank you. Are there any other people wishing to speak in oral requests?
There is not.
Thank you. I will now go with the council, the mayor's announcements. The City of Campbell continues to work closely with our partnering agencies to monitor how the coronavirus is impacting our communities. We are actively monitoring the information provided by the U.S. Center of Disease Control and reviewing guidance provided by the county's public health department. We continue to take proactive steps to prioritize the health and safety of our employees and community members. Our focus is to maintain essential services and keep you informed. Please note that the first and third Thursdays of every month at Orchard City Banquet Hall, with reservations, you may have your COVID test. So please consider, there's lots of vacancies there on Thursday. Please continue to receive your COVID tests. Santa Clara has published a new online dashboard which tracks the numbers of vaccine doses received and administered by the various providers in Santa Clara County. To find out who can currently be vaccinated, who will be eligible to receive the vaccination next, and other frequently asked questions, please visit sccfreevax.org, freevax.org. City Hall will be closed for business on Monday, February 15th, in observance of President's Day. The police department will remain open, but we get to celebrate President's Day along with Valentine's Day, I think, is coming up. The city's clerk's office is accepting applications for the vacancy on the Historic Preservation Board for one short term expiring in October 21. Appointment of its members to the Historic Preservation Board shall be made from among professionals in the historic preservation related disciplines. To be eligible for appointment on this volunteer advisory commission, applicants must reside within Campbell city limits and be at least 18 years of age. Applications may be obtained from the city clerk's office or on the board and commissions page of the city website. For more information, please visit the city's website at campbellca.gov or email the city clerk's office at clerksoffice@campbellca.gov. Housing Trust Silicon Valley is partnering with the City of Campbell to host an Empowering Homeowners, SCC. It is an informational webinar on Wednesday, February 10th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. The webinar is the county's down payment assistance program to help low to moderate income households purchase their first home in the county. For more information, please visit housingtrustsv.org. Spread the love. Here's the Valentine's Day. Spread the love at Campbell's 44th Annual Valentine 5K virtual fun run or walk from February 13th to the 21st. Create your own 5K anywhere, anytime, virtually. Register by Friday, February 5th, 2021 to receive your race shirt. For more information, please visit campbellca.gov/recreation. One of pop music's most fascinating success stories and best-selling solo pianist of all time, John Brickman, will support the Heritage Theater with Share the Love virtual Valentine's Day themed concert from February 12th to 14th. For ticket information, please visit heritagetheater.org, and that's heritagetheatre.org, heritagetheater.org. Please support our Heritage Theater, and this is a wonderful way to do it, and enjoy Valentine's Day. The Campbell Museums present History at Home on Friday, February 12th. Join us for a virtual meeting where history meets fiction as Ashana Sadra reads her novel, A Door Between Us. Tickets can be purchased by visiting the Campbell Museum's website at campbellmuseums.com. Celebrate Campbell's rich heritage at the Early Settlers Day virtual event on Wednesday, February 17th at noon. Carrie Perkins from the Campbell Museum will discuss the 175th anniversary of the Campbell's family coming to California. Updates on the city business will also be presented. Register for free at campbellchamber.net. And for those who may not know, the This is the oldest public celebration event in the state of California, save the Rose Bowl Parade. So a fantastic presentation and wonderful legacy of Campbell to continue 175 years of the Campbell family coming to California. The Campbell Library offers extensive virtual story time and classes weekly, including baby story time, kids art club, yoga for adults, and so much more. There's baby sign language too. Check out the online calendar for more information about classes, virtual book group discussions, and other programs at sccl.org. Thank you. We are now at the portion of the meeting for consent calendar. Are there
Mayor
that would
Gibbons?
like to, oops,
Mayor
yes.
Gibbons, would this be the appropriate time to report out on the closed session?
Yes, please, thank you.
Very well. In executive session pursuant to item B on this evening's agenda, the council took action to authorize the city attorney's office to defend a lawsuit filed on behalf of William Perry to challenge a code enforcement action that was upheld by an administrative hearing officer regarding 209 Railway. By unanimous action, the council authorized the city attorney's office to pursue civil injunctive relief in order to remedy those violations if Mr. Perry does not do so.
Thank you, appreciate that information being presented here. Now we will move on to the consent calendar. Are there any council members that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing none, Deputy City Clerk, have you received any public comments for any item on the consent calendar?
We have none.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Sorry, I jumped in too quick.
That's
I
right.
make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Resnikoff. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bybee,
Aye.
Councilwoman Landry,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Resnikoff,
Aye.
Mayor Gibbons.
Aye. Thank you very much. We are now at the portion of the meeting, which is a public hearing and introduction of ordinances. We have two items under this category this evening. The first is a public hearing to consider the request of Scott Cooley for an authorization to proceed with an amendment to the general plan to change the land use designation of property located at 700 West Hamilton Ave from general commercial to residential commercial professional office to allow for a future proposal for a mixed use development. And we have a staff presentation on this evening.
You do. Thank you, Madam Mayor, the City Council. Let me quickly share my screen here. Okay. Cecil, can you allow me to share my screen? Ryan? Cecil or Ryan, are you there?
Yeah, go ahead, Doc.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so we have a preliminary application to allow an authorization to proceed with a general plan amendment for property located at 700 West Hamilton Avenue. This is an approximately 4-acre property located at the southwest corner of Hamilton Avenue, Santa Monica Expressway. It is adjacent to commercial and residential uses to the west the Alvin's Corner Penny Lane mixed-use project to the north, and various residential uses to the south. It is currently zoned C2 general commercial with a corresponding general plan, general commercial designation as well. Here's some photographs of the site, currently developed with a 3-story, 58,000 square foot office building that was most recently occupied by a culinary school and a gymnasium. Just in terms of the land use context, here we have the property in the middle screen. Again, the red is general commercial. To the north and half a block over, we have properties that are designated mixed use, which allows residential, commercial, and office. This designation was created by the city's current 2001 general plan. At the time, these properties were looked at in need of renovation. So changing the land use designation allowed for redevelopment, and particularly with the property located to the north that did become the Alvin's Corner Penny Lane mixed use project. The applicant's request would allow a change of designation from general commercial to mixed use, specifically the residential commercial office, allowing up to 27 units per gross acre to allow for a future mixed use project. This process is not codified in the city zoning code, but effectively, because only the city council can authorize a general plan amendment, staff's historic practice is to take such requests to the city council through a preliminary application review so that the council can either authorize a request so that a formal submittal can be submitted, or simply deny the request if you feel the proposal has no merit. Your action tonight, however, does not bind the council to actually approve a future project. Just allows for the applicant to review it, to submit it, and for staff to conduct further review. Here's a preliminary site plan that the applicant provided, showing a similar development to the Alvin's Corner project, where you have a mixed-use building along Hamilton Avenue with townhomes located behind it. In terms of land use considerations, maintaining the current land use designation of the property of general commercial would allow for commercial redevelopment opportunities in the future. Such examples would include a larger office development, larger than what's currently there, a hotel, or a regional serving medical facility. However, converting the property to mixed use could allow for formation of a mixed use district in this area that would provide additional housing units and opportunities for small businesses. This would, of course, be in coordination with other development in the area that could be seen down the line. In terms of fiscal considerations, the big question is, how does the fiscal impact of a mixed-use project compare to commercial redevelopment of the property? Ultimately, any redevelopment of the site would increase property tax generation. A hotel would generate TOT revenue, while retail would also generate sales tax revenue. However, absent a market analysis, it's not really possible to identify the viability of any commercial redevelopment option or what likelihood such a development would actually occur. In terms of housing production, the applicant is not currently proposing a density bonus. So based on the applicant's gross lot site area and the city's current maximum unit count of 27 units per gross acre, a project could be developed with 117 units. Of those, 18 would be low and moderate income units. The city's 15% inclusionary housing ordinance requiring that number. Now, the application included a density bonus. The staff report, unfortunately, our apologies, is a bit out of date. AB 2345, effective January 1st, actually increases the maximum density bonus to 50%. So that could increase the total unit count to 176 units, at approximately 41 units per gross acre. There are different scenarios for how many below market rates units the project could incorporate, depending on the income category. That could range from 18 at the very low income unit range up to 52 at the moderate income level. However, as noted, the applicant is not proposing a density bonus project, nor is he required to do so. So if the council wishes to authorize a general plan amendment, but also maximize housing production, the council could require a submittal of a development agreement that would specify the city's desired percentage of BMR units in exchange for the general plan amendment. Alternatively, as discussed further in your staff report, another option that could be considered is the creation of an affordable housing overlay zone ordinance that would effectively be a process that would need to be completed ahead of a formal submittal. That process would allow the property to still be developed commercially, but also allow a resident, excuse me, a residential project to occur nonetheless. And one last aspect to consider if the council is agreeable to mixed use redevelopment is to what extent you would be supportive of the applicant's proposal to create a small little pocket park at the end of Gale Avenue. As shown in the project plans, the proposal does propose converting that area of Gale Avenue to a small park. There are a number of technical aspects of this that would need to be looked at further, but before that analysis is conducted, staff would seek direction from the council if this is a desirable feature for the project to incorporate. In conclusion, staff does recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution authorizing application of the general plan amendment, subject to a development agreement to provide an increased percentage of below market rate units. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. At this point, we could have comments from the developer, or you can wait till the end, whichever you prefer.
I'd be happy to speak at this point.
Sure. We typically give you 5 minutes, and then if you have comments at the end.
Okay, I'm going to do my best here to share a screen. And can everyone see the 700 West Hamilton screen?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. My name is Scott Cooley. I'm the owner of 700 West Hamilton. I've been the owner since 1994. When I purchased the property, it was vacant. I've been a property owner in Campbell since 1988. This is my first time I've ever requested a zoning change before the council, or I think any change before the council. But I've got to the point where I don't see any other options without a GP amendment. Historically, we've had 2 tenants. We've had a culinary school, which was great. They closed 2 or 3 years ago. And we've searched the worldwide, trying to find other trade schools and have not had any success. All of them have been closed down because of legal issues with the trade schools. We've had a gym. It was Gold's Gym. Now it's American Barbell, but the same owner. He recently served notice to vacate the premises come May. So I now sit on an empty building. His reasoning was the COVID-19 related distress and the reduction of need for health clubs in general. Interesting note, both the current and past tenants haven't matched the zoning, the C2 requirements. I've been actively marketing the site for 2 years and have virtually no success. Again, we constantly run up against the whole zoning issue. I've been working with Daniel at the city trying to find potential tenants, but to date we have not had that success. The zoning requirements is the primary issue. The site is also shaped in an irregular fashion. It's got a narrow entryway over on Hamilton Avenue. So if we, and I'm going to try to do this. So here you can see it's kind of a flag shape, and the driveway that goes out on Hamilton Avenue drops onto Hamilton almost to where your right turn lane is going onto the expressway. So having 2 driveways out on Hamilton Avenue isn't an option. And almost all the commercial uses, whether it's a hotel, for example, requires 2 driveways. And most of them are against any sort of a second driveway dumping out into a residential neighborhood. So it creates a real problem to put on most uses, especially if they're sizable. And we know, and after talking at length with all the neighbors, that they're not real favorable of having commercial traffic all day long coming out onto their residential street. So we have a real limitation with the property in terms of redevelopment to, things that might meet in the C2 code zoning. The commercial users, I'm sorry, I've got a little technical here. Here we go. Like I said, they're resistant to entrance from the residential side. Another issue that we have is the trees in front, the signage. And if we look at, this is across the street from Penny Lane, and you can see the trees, the visibility, the signage options for a potential tenant just doesn't exist. The trees were mandated many years ago by the city and are not to be trimmed. So we've stuck with that. Here's a view from the expressway. So again, we can see a little bit of the building, but it's not very viable from a commercial tenant standpoint. And then if we were to look at the Gale Drive, beautiful street, and we can see, though, it's certainly residential. If when we're approaching the street or approaching to drive into the building, if we're coming from the north, the east, or the south, we have to do a U-turn on Hamilton. So that creates a little bit of a problem for commercial heavy traffic use. Let's go on. Obviously, our proposal is to modify the zoning to be mixed use, support residential component to meld well with the neighbors. We want to eliminate the commercial traffic through residential streets. We have spoken with both the associations with the townhome complexes next door. They're both favorable in it. They see a big advantage to having residential next door rather than the large commercial parking lot and the dirt area. Both of those have been attractive to homeless encampments and various problems that come with people that stay the night there. We also would believe that a residential use would reduce noise, parking, and traffic next to their homes and right next to their backyard. I've looked at the C2 zoning options extensively. Unfortunately, of the 37 supported uses, really the hotel and the public school would be about the only potential to fill the 4 acres. Neither option could be supported with only a single driveway. And the driveway in the back would not be attractive. All the other uses under C2 all require 10,000 square feet, and we're obviously much higher than that. A lot of
So if I may, sorry to interrupt, could you conclude this portion of your comments?
I'm sorry?
Would you conclude this portion of your comments?
Okay. So effectively, I think current zoning is almost as obsolete as the building itself. And I don't think the building has, a lot to offer Campbell as it stands. So I have 2 options: keep the building as it is, try to find additional tenants, or look for a zoning change and look for a complete redevelopment. We have no revenue to the city as it has been for a long time. Property tax can very low. That all would obviously change with the redevelopment. It's my belief that the city of Campbell would benefit from every angle. Up next would be Kurt Anderson of Anderson Architects. And then I've also reached out with John Gaylord of Civil Engineering Associates. Their vast experiences, they're going to take it from here. And with much appreciation, thank you for the consideration.
All right, if I may, process-wise, I think we will go to questions from the council to staff and the applicant, and then open the public hearing to have an additional information. Unless, yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Just a few questions for Daniel. If Daniel is there, I can't tell on the screen with the document up. I can't see him. Daniel, you're there?
Yeah, Scott, can you unshare your screen?
Yes. Done.
Perfect, thank you.
Great, thank you. It's just easier to see it. Thank you, Daniel. Without going into details, Daniel, the original things we had there, the culinary school in its heyday and the gym, was this a generator of any significant sales tax? A lot of that was service businesses.
Yeah, those were both service operations.
I know
Neither was
the
retail.
culinary school did some sales and had some catering, and so very minor though, and relative to the size of the facility.
I would think so, because while they did do some ancillary retail sales, I mean, the bulk of their business was instructional in nature, which is a non-taxable service.
And the same thing with the gym would be a service, so.
Yeah, unless that minor ancillary retail sales.
Okay. Two other quick questions. You put up a slide that talked about the range of BMRs from very low and moderate. I wasn't sure if you were talking about a range depending on which ones were chosen, or how did you come up with the 15, 24, and 44%?
Sure. So the new state density bonus law, again, that went into effect just last month, increases the amount of density bonus that a developer can actually achieve. So the number of units, the number of below market rate units, and the type of those increases based on an affordability level. So at the very low income level, you only need to provide 15%, which for this project is 18 units. At the low income level, you would need to provide 24%. That's 29 units. Now at the moderate level, 44% is required, and that results in 52 units. Again, this is all out of state law.
So are you saying that at 176 units, based on the 41 units per gross acre, there would be 99 BMR units from very low to moderate total?
Well, the 176 is inclusive of the BMR.
No, I understand that, but I guess what I'm trying to understand, if there was a trade-off or these are firm numbers, is it 99 BMRs out of 176?
I'm not seeing where you're saying 99. So
18,
the range.
18, 29, and 52, are they ranges?
No, these are options. They're effectively three discrete options.
Three options, either or.
Correct.
There could be some combination.
Density bonus requires you to achieve the same income level. So the developer has to choose either very low, or moderate.
Okay, so it's 18, 29, or best case 52 if they're moderate.
Correct, and this effectively also covers the city's inclusionary housing requirement as well. So
okay, I misunderstood. I thought it seemed too many the way I was looking at it. The last question is, you mentioned something towards the end about options to require a certain level of BMR, or perhaps maybe even certain levels within the BMRs. Is that something that because it requires maybe some analysis to what makes sense, it can be left to the planning commission to do a first pass on and make a recommendation to council?
I mean, it's a pretty significant policy question of whether or not this should proceed just as a general plan amendment and let the applicant determine if they want to do a density bonus, or if the general plan change should be tied to a development agreement, or if you want to go even further and look at something more like an affordable housing overlay zone. I mean, generally, that's a policy question that would come from the council. And then, yes, staff and planning commission could work on the details subsequently.
So we could say that we wanted to go down that path, but we wouldn't be defining the levels or how we were doing that. that would be a direction for staff and planning commission to say, okay, assuming we want that zone, how do we implement it?
I mean, that's a pretty critical aspect of the policy decision. So I suspect we would also want to go back to the council a little more further detail. Looks like Paul has some further comments.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel, and Vice Mayor Resnikoff. So I think what staff was attempting to do here is to really address the prominent issue, and that is, does the city council feel that this property should change to a different zone designation? And if you're kind of on the fence and thinking, well, it's still pretty viable for a select few uses, then what's in it for the city? So if you're going to say, okay, property owner, we're going to go ahead and entertain an application to consider general plan amendment, but we want to see more affordable housing units than the minimum. That's what we're trying to get you to think through that, if that's a road you want to go down.
Okay.
But really, you know, the city is not obligated to change general plan land use designation. And, you know, there really should be some public benefit that comes out of that. So that's what we just wanted you to start thinking that.
No, that clarifies it. Thank you. That answers basically the question. Thank you.
Other council members with questions? Councilwoman Landry?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so they're proposing a park in the street, but when you showed the picture, some of those houses have driveways facing out into that section of the street. Is that correct?
They are proposing the terminus of Gale to become a park, but the units that face Gale Avenue actually have driveway access to the rear. But the homes would effectively now face a park rather than a street. So that certainly would be a change of condition for those 3 units that are already there.
And so that would require us to abandon the street. Is there any cost to the developer when we abandon the street, other than the development of the park? Does he have to buy the land or anything like that?
That's a very good question, and we don't have an answer to that yet. So the thinking is that before staff conducts that level of research, that we want confirmation from the council that this is something that you actually want to entertain. It may not necessarily be feasible in the end, but it does require that level of research still.
Okay, and this AHOZ ordinance, it says here under the alternatives that this would require extensive council direction and public and commission input. How long is that process? And would the developer then have to wait to submit a project till that process is over?
It would be a work plan item. I mean, timing obviously depends on what else is on the council's work plan for all the other departments, but probably looking out towards a year. And yes, it would need to be completed prior to an application being submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members? Councilmember Bybee.
Just one quick question regarding the public park. If that was part of the development, who would be responsible for the ongoing maintenance of that park?
Also an open question. That's something that could be tied to the developer, most likely. But that would, again, be a question for our public works staff to figure out if the council is agreeable to that idea.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? I'll hold my questions to comments at this point. And we will now open the public hearing. And I think we have a speaker.
Yes. Ken Johnson?
No, Ken, it's Anderson, I believe.
Kurt Anderson.
Kurt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks to the council. And I've got to tell you, as you know, and my office is in Campbell, by the way. We're across from the Heritage Theater. We're on Campbell Avenue. I've been doing a lot of these Zoom meetings through COVID, and I will tell you, this is the first public hearing we've actually stood up and done the Pledge of Allegiance. And I got to tell you, Mayor, that warmed my heart. That was great. I wish more of the cities would do that, because we're working about 8 different cities now, and nobody's doing that. So hats off to Campbell. That was great. Appreciation of staff, Daniel and And Paul, those guys do a great job. They've spent a lot of time communicating with us as we share some of our ideas as we develop the site. I want to talk a little bit about affordability. We have a 50% inclusionary policy from the city, which we are planning on doing. The whole thing about the density bonus that Daniel was referring to was actually to increase the amount of units on this parcel from what we're showing up to upwards of 176. Now, the problem with that is that starts changing a whole different construction type of the building. We have to start doing podium parking. We've got to start doing more vertical stuff. My firm is currently, we are working on close to 1,000 affordable units in San Jose. We're doing several 25-story buildings. We've got another project that's got 9, 10-story buildings, all affordable. So we're very dialed into this whole construction cost. And if you start thinking about doing overlay, I think you really need to ultimately think is how many new units you want to achieve on the site that's going to make economic sense for the developer. We've got to be able to build this thing so it makes sense. Our construction costs since COVID started have increased. I was hoping they were going to go down. They've actually increased. Lumber's gone up almost 3 times since COVID has started. So construction costs have actually gone up. Unfortunately, I was hoping it was going to go the other way. So we need to look at that. It's a balancing act. How many units we do? We designed this project. Can I get a screen share?
So, Kurt, I'm going to constrain your time here. So please, I'll give you another minute.
Well, Madam Mayor, I thought both Scott and I were each going to get 5 minutes. That's what we were led to believe.
I can give you 5 minutes instead of giving you 5 minutes at the end of the public hearing. I can give you 5 minutes now.
Let me I'll make it very concise so we have a little time left at the end. If anybody has some questions, we can deal with that. How's that sound? So real quickly, here, as you can see on my screen, here's the parcel. Can everybody see this? So you can see we have a very short linear frontage here for the commercial aspect. We've designed this project to somewhat mimic Penny Lane. Commercial component in the front with apartments above. This will be where we're going to put our affordability. There's parking under this building. The rest of these units are going to be for sale units, single family townhomes. We have sufficient parking accommodated. We're very sensitive to the relation between the townhomes here and also townhomes across the street. It was our thought we could create some additional open space here for the community on this. We've had some discussion with the associate next door. They're kind of on the fence, and that's something that we can work through as far as who's going to pay to construct it and maintain it. I think the real important thing is how this parcel really does not lend itself well to a commercial project because of the depth and because of the 2 access points like Scott was talking about. We would have all the residential access probably come off Gale, even though they could come through the project through here. But this is basically more of the commercial project out on the street. Let's do some real quick elevations. So my concern, I guess, as we go through this whole thing is, I'd like to have a lot of flexibility as we develop if the council deems in their infinite wisdom to allow us to proceed with a GP amendment request. I would like to be able to have as much flexibility as possible. We will include affordable housing. It's a huge need in this area. I think we need to have flexibility on what it is and also what the ultimate yield we're going to include on the property. I think 176 units, quite frankly, I've lived in Campbell pretty much my whole professional life and worked here. I think that's an awful lot of units on the site, 176 units. I think what we've actually presented at 117 is really much more a palatable blend with the neighborhood, what's across the street. So I would caution the council beacon how this affordability things. And I'd like us to have the flexibility as the architect and developer to really come up with a couple of very unique solutions, how we can accommodate the need for more housing and the need for more affordable in Campbell, but make it so the project's gonna work economically, not only for the developer, but for the city. So at that point, I'm gonna stop and then we can move on.
Thank you. Kurt, could you explain there are townhomes and then the apartment building? Is that how you're thinking it?
That is correct. Let me go back to so this right here, this is Hamilton Avenue.
Yes.
And this is commercial here. We have a commercial component here on the street. We put the parking behind it as compared to Penny Lane where they got the parking in front. We've actually made this more eccentric commercial centric, so it's closer to the street for better visibility because it's such a short frontage here. Then we have 4 stories of apartments over the top of this. The parking for this building is below. That is accessed via this ramp right here, you can see. So here's Hamilton, here's San Tomas, here's that we've got a nice big roof deck for open space for the tenants here. They all have balconies. So they have a lot of private and open space. So these would be apartments that we'd be doing the affordability component inside this building because it probably makes a lot more sense, although we would have some, most likely have some affordable units in the back as well for purchase. So we have a mix. We have some rental and we have some purchase because that really helps.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak?
There are not.
Okay. All right. Then I will close the public hearing and bring this back to council for discussion. I would offer an initial comment that I think staff has provided some food for thought for the council, including things like marketing analysis and master planning. And I think they used some other terms about agreements, development agreements, and the whole issue of affordable units. So the city is in a unique position on this particular site because it is not zoned for housing, and we could rezone it for housing in the manner in which this developer is proposing. The new RENA, the city's in the just beginning the process of the housing element update, and it needs to comply with the new RENA numbers. And the very low income number for the city over the 8-year period is 770. The low income number is 440. The moderate income number is 499. And above moderate is 1,292. So the fact that staff has introduced the possibility of doing a development agreement here and increasing the affordable units sounds like something that I think might benefit from discussion by the council, along with what's the right process to use for this particular application. Anyone have some thoughts? Could you take that down so we could see the audience, please?
I'm sorry, Mayor, what do you want me to do?
Can you take the Zoom down, please?
You want me to take it off? Yeah,
Yes, please.
You got it. There you go.
There we go. Thank you so much. Council members, any comments? Okay, Council Member Lopez and then Councilwoman Landry.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that staff put into this, as well as the presentation from the applicant, which was very helpful. It's pretty clear to me that just for the city and for the neighborhood community that the current use is not working. So it's definitely something that I want to look at. And Mayor Gibbons, I appreciate you bringing up the RENA numbers. I am not at this point in support of the affordable housing overlay option, just because of the cost of the city and staff and time. But I am concerned about the RENA numbers, and in particular the number of very low income units, which, as we all know, is always very difficult. So I'm supportive of moving the process forward and seeing the application. I very much appreciate. I think this is incredibly important that the applicant, from what I've heard tonight, seems to be working in good faith with the city and with the neighbors. That's very important to me on any project, and would hope to see that continue. The park I'm open to. I think there have been issues raised about it, and I think not completely sure that that's the right option, but I'm glad that additional community benefits like that are being considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Landry?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, staff and the architect team and the applicant. Very thorough. I like the fact that there was alternatives in the report and very detailed information about the unit numbers. My understanding of the BMRs that they are having to be integrated in the normal pricing of the houses. You made a comment that it was all in the apartments, so I just would want to make sure that's distributed evenly. I do support a potential general plan amendment. I'm not totally thrilled with the site plan yet. I don't know that the park in the street is going to work with the fact that some of those houses are facing, the existing houses are facing out into the street. We do want to park. One of our priorities this year is open space. So we definitely would want to park. Let's see, what was the other thing? I don't think the AHOZ is viable because that's a whole year process that puts a developer out even a year before they can start with that. But I do appreciate staff giving that as an option. So I would look at what the recommended action is and support that at such time that we have everybody speak.
Okay. Any other comments? Vice Mayor Resnikoff, and then Councilmember Bybee.
Thank you. So I'm supportive of what we've just heard from Council Members Lopez and Landry. I'm interested certainly in more housing. I am interested in the BMR. To be honest, my first inclination here was to look at density bonuses and all that. I think I am cognizant of what Kurt Anderson presented, but understanding the economic viability, it has to work, right? We know that. And you've certainly been before us in other projects, so we have a little history of the work you've done. So I appreciate your comments on that. It brought up some issues that that I wasn't thinking about. I think if there are ways to get more BMR that works with the project, that's great. If we burden the project to the point it's not feasible and we get nothing, then nobody wins. So there's that fine line that hopefully we can work with planning on in development of this. I think adding open space and parks in these projects is good. We know that every time we do this, it adds in some unintended consequences and it's difficult to make it work. I think that I would leave up to the planning commission and planning department to work to see if that makes sense. And I think that's it. I mean, I'm interested in going forward and seeing how this project could work as for more housing that we need, and as Director Cremorian said, also for the benefit of the city. It's for the benefit of a nice project, but provides the proper type of housing for the city. But I like what I see so far.
Vice Mayor Resnikoff, did you have any comment about the retail?
I'm sorry, about
the retail.
It's interesting. We've talked about this. I always like to maintain our retail base. And it's why I asked the question earlier, what have we historically gotten from this base? We're going to get a bump on property taxes here, certainly if it's developed. But to the extent it can work, I like it. I'm much more adamant when we are losing at a tax base that we already have, right? To the extent that we can do it, I'd like to see a better tax base here. I do understand some of the limitations of the property. I'm in favor of doing that if possible. I don't think I know enough to demand it. I'd like it to be under consideration. I know it's not a good answer. It's not a firm answer. As you know my background in that. I don't like to lose what we have. Here we don't really have, but maybe we could get. Economically feasible. It's got to work. So I would ask planning to work toward the goal of can that happen. I mean, it ties into what Director Cremorian was saying of what is to the benefit of the city, and that would.
Thank you. And Councilmember Bybee.
I would echo most of the comments that have been said already. I do look at this as an opportunity to look at our affordable housing needs. And I would support the recommendation to move forward with the general plan amendment, tying it to a development agreement so that we do get a increased production of housing. And I'm particularly interested in more BMR units. As far as the park, I think it's a nice feature and obviously a public benefit, but I would actually support the developer maintaining the park and not requiring city staff to maintain the park.
Thank you. So,
Mayor, may I?
yeah, oh, sorry. Yes, of course.
Just a comment. I think we had a desk item that was emailed to us. And I don't know if we have to reference that into the record or not. As a public comment.
No, that it goes in the record automatically.
Okay, just checking. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a different take on this. I have a take much more in line with staff. And that is that the city has no obligation to change the zoning here. It is a wonderful opportunity to be mutually beneficial, to change the zoning to allow for housing. As a member of the ABAG board, I am really acutely aware of the housing requirements and the densities that are being needed for Campbell to meet its housing goals. And this site, because of its length and breadth, has an opportunity to have a variety of housing types on it, not just single family homes. We're being asked to develop multifamily units. This parcel has wonderful opportunities to do that. The other challenge is that our density bonus law is 15%. If you do the our inclusionary ordinance is 15%. The density bonus overrides that. So there's a lot of things there. This would be a really marvelous opportunity for community benefit to allow the developer to gain tremendous property value by the rezoning and get a housing project with a higher density with an agreement on higher affordable units. And I think that we could approve the zoning change conditioned along what I think Councilmember Bybee said, a development agreement that increases the affordable units. And I am amenable to not having any retail commercial requirement. It's one of the things that our housing element and our general plan was looking at and hasn't reached a conclusion. We have so much empty retail space, and certainly across the street at Penny Lane has had longstanding empty retail space. I would like to see a development agreement and proposals from the developer showing a range of housing types and densities and give them the flexibility of not having retail space at all. Maybe I think we need the park requirement is essential. That's one of our goals. And I think this could be a great opportunity to have a higher number of units in the affordable unit. And I'm not saying, I think it's, forgive me, Vice Mayor Resnikoff, I'm not saying that we can't make it so difficult that it doesn't pencil out. There are ways of making things pencil out, but also there are a lot of grants out there now through the county and Measure A to get affordable housing. So I think there's opportunity to make this a really special project for the city. And I would be disappointed if we didn't at least try to do it, at least try and do something really significant for affordable housing in Campbell. Councilwoman Landry and then Councilmember Lopez.
I support your comments. The staff recommendation says to provide increased percentage of below market rate housing units. I don't know if we would add to that about the low to very low, or if just by saying BMRs, we cover that we want more of the low and very low. And I do support the idea of not just having the single family townhomes, but having more of some mixed use type of, it's all one style of or size of house right now. And I would like to see maybe some smaller units to get more very low to low income housing.
It's the missing middle discussion. This
Yeah.
really has an opportunity for the missing middle. Councilmember Lopez?
Likewise, I'd be supportive of that suggestion, and maybe with a focus on the housing element could be some more possibility for different proposals for possibly moving the park, addressing some of these concerns. I would just echo, I think, what Councilwoman Landry touched on, which is that I do think it matters the very low, and what part that is. So I don't want to lose that just because we're doing BMR.
So traditionally, the city has a percentage of allocation by each category. And unless the density bonus requires a certain amount, we always prorate it across the tiers. And then the density bonus has particular requirements. So council members, there would be a motion on the supporting staff's recommendation, and Community Development Director Kumayan might help with that, to support the staff recommendation to have a development agreement, which provides the community benefit of additional density and mixed use housing types with an increased amount of BMRs. Director Kumayan, how is your thought on that wording of intent?
Madam Mayor, I think you stated it very well. This is kind of a very broad discussion at this point. As you know as well, this is just the authorization to proceed with an application. This property would also qualify for the mandatory study session. So to Councilmember Lopez's suggestion, we can have the architect and applicant come back to the council with 2-3 different design options that reflect the various housing types that you were talking about. But I think your statement hit the nail on the head, and we fully understand it.
Vice Mayor Reznikov?
Thank you. And just to clarify, Mayor, what you just said, we're giving direction for increased BMR in a broader scale that will then be worked out options wise. Is it correct? I'm very supportive of that. I just don't know today that we can give specifics of numbers and types of units, but you're suggesting it as written, the direction is clear to increase the amount of below market.
And I would offer the clarification that mixing housing types besides quote unquote apartments in a high rise versus townhomes. When we talk the missing middle, we're really talking a 4-unit building on a corner of a lot or something. It's a variety of housing type and cost and needs that has been identified as a very viable way of providing housing that is needed. So
I'm supportive of the goal, and I think we know when we send something out this early, what we get back ultimately, or the planning commission back, may be very different or may deviate in certain areas. We don't know. So I'm okay with that's a broad direction of where we want to go. I'm fine with that. I'll support that.
So with the development agreement, staff would then negotiate with the applicant, and then understanding that penciling out, we'll need to get to the bottom of that and have them submit supporting documentation. But at the end of the day, council, it will be your call to determine if you agree to the terms of the development agreement. If you don't, then you could always send it back for renegotiation. So you're under no obligation to pursue this project.
Yeah, this is one of very, very few large parcels remaining in the city. It wasn't identified for housing. It's a wonderful opportunity, and the value of the land is perfect for changing it to housing. So do we need a motion?
I will have a motion. Are you ready for a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I make the motion that we recommend to staff, or the city council recommends to staff, adopt a resolution to authorize an application for a general plan amendment subject to a development agreement to provide an increased percentage of below market rate housing units and with mixed housing types.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Lopez second, and Community Development Director has a question.
Yes, so before you vote on that motion, did you also want to include what Council Member Bybee suggested of if you do consider the park, that maintenance would be on the applicant, or do you want to let that go?
I'll amend my
Include that.
motion. Okay, thank you, Paul. I will amend my motion to include that the park should be maintained by the development.
And Councilmember Lopez, are you amenable to that change?
I am.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilwoman Landry and a second by Councilmember Lopez. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bybee,
Aye.
Councilwoman Landry,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Resnikoff,
Aye.
Mayor Gibbons.
Aye. I think it's great to have
Mayor, you lost your mic.
You're on mute, Liz.
Yeah. All right. So I just said, thank you very much for coming in and being a wonderful Campbell citizen and working to find, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for your yourself and your design team to come up with a project that you'll be very proud of and Campbell can be very supportive of. So look forward to seeing what you
May I throw a couple of words in? First off, I want to applaud the council for having a very progressive vision for the site. As you said, this is one of the last large parcels we could really actually do much higher density than you're normally used to, which are 27 dwelling units per acre. Like I was saying, the stuff we're doing downtown says it's 800 dwelling units per acre. So I guarantee you, I'm going to get you a lot of units on this site. It's going to look great. We'll deal with the surrounding stuff, and we'll figure out how to make this stuff working from a percentage standpoint. So thank you for your support. We're real excited about it. And I know, and Scott's got a quick one he wants to go ahead, Scott.
Well, just want to say I greatly appreciate the direction from the council, because obviously there's a lot at play and a lot of work in front of us to go in this direction. But I got a good, clear signal to do that, and that's going to be the direction I'm going to go. So I really appreciate all the commentary, and now we've got some real plans in front of us.
So remember, you have to come back with 3 distinct concepts.
You got it, Mayor. Matt, everybody, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We may continue recording unless anyone wants to take a break. I thought we'd go through the next item. Okay. Item number 11. This is a public hearing to consider a city-initiated zoning code amendment, PLN 2018-163, adding new chapter 21.45, temporary use permits to the Campbell Municipal Code and amending various other sections of Title 21 and Title 5 of the Campbell Municipal Code pertaining to the permitting and regulation of temporary uses on private property and the associated rescission of City Council Policy 9.8, approval of temporary permits for Christmas trees and pumpkin sales. This is an resolution requiring a roll call vote. We have a presentation.
You do.
Hear it again.
Okay. So this is a temporary use permit ordinance that city initiated. This process began when the Planning Commission initiated a zoning code amendment to adopt the TUP ordinance back in June 2018. It's gone through a couple rounds of review with feedback from the chamber, additional feedback from the council. The Planning Commission most recently reviewed the revised draft at its meeting of October 27th and made its recommendation for approval to the council at that time. The TUP ordinance as drafted effectively would create 3 tiers of activities. The first would be exempt. It clearly identifies that some activities are simply not subject to the TUP ordinance, private parties, fundraising by children, and protected non-commercial speech activities such as voter registration drives. Secondly, you would have activities where permits not required, but the activity is still subject to general operation requirements. Examples of those activities would be blood drives, grand openings, and fundraising events. Then everything else that's not otherwise exempt would be covered by a new temporary use permit requirement. And this would allow a wide range of activities that are currently not permitted or permitted only in very limited circumstances. This would include any use that includes a single day ABC liquor license, fairs and carnivals, food truck events, short-term valet programs, beer and wine festivals outside of downtown, which themselves within downtown would not be subject to the TUP, as well as some additional activities as noted in the actual draft, and any other activity that a future community development director finds is consistent with one of the listed activities. The TUP ordinance would allow review of these applications through the existing administrative review process, where the decision is rendered by the community development director. That requires a 10-day public notice in advance of the decision. After a decision is rendered, there is a 10-day appeal period that allows the applicant or any interested member of the public to challenge the decision. Additionally, the director may also forward the request to the Planning Commission if he or she feels that greater public review is warranted. The ordinance would also allow the director to impose operational standards specific to a proposal as conditions of approval. An example of that would be hours of operation, days of week. The director may also allow the approved temporary use to reoccur without a separate application. If an applicant proposes, for example, concerts in the spring and summer, only one application would be required, not 2. The new TUP process would replace the existing police department and council review of carnival permits, for example, with St. Lucy's. This process would also replace the current city council Christmas tree lot policy, as they would now be redundant. In terms of fees, the city council adopted fees in 2019 in anticipation of this ordinance. It would provide for a lower cost fee for nonprofits of $489, and for all other entities, approximately $1,600. In conclusion, the Planning Commission does recommend that the council take first reading of the draft ordinance and also adopt a resolution rescinding City Council Policy 9.8 that pertains to Christmas tree and pumpkin sales lots. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Are there any questions of staff? Councilwoman Landry?
Yeah, I think Councilmember Lopez had his hand up first.
I
Did you?
didn't see it, sorry.
No. So I don't see anything in here about limitations on how many times a specific business could do this within a year. I don't know that it would be abused, but because you would be allowing them to be in outside areas, which I'm assuming could be taking up parking spaces. So is there a limit of how many temporary use permits of one single business can get within a year?
Not as written. That would be at the discretion of the director. I mean, I think you're alluding to at some point, the use is no longer temporary and simply becomes permanent. And that would be the director's judgment. He or she could simply deny it or approve it subject to more restrictive limitation and simply indicate that any further request would require a full conditional use permit.
Okay, so you're saying that right now it's not, like, we can't say 12 a year, 1 a month, that it would be up to the director to determine that later?
Correct. I mean, if the council does desire so, you could impose a limitation that would restrict the director's ability to approve activities for a certain duration or period of frequency. But as drafted, it does provide a lot of purview to the director.
I
Okay,
think,
and then,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Paul,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
No,
Council-
go
council
answer that
member.
question because I have a different one.
Well, we could, in the definition of temporary use, define a temporary use as an activity that doesn't last more than a certain amount of days, like 30 days within a calendar year. That could be worked into the definition of temporary use.
Okay,
Then that way it doesn't seem so arbitrary.
yeah, it just seems like it could become more of a permanent use than a temporary. I also noticed at the top of page 2 of 4 of the packet, page 128, first paragraph, last sentence says, outside of permitted primary use and perhaps reviewing cannabis consumption events. I know we have a ban on cannabis retail. Would we still be allowed to have a cannabis consumption event?
I'm gonna look to the city attorney for an answer on that one. Bill?
Yes, as our cannabis ordinances in, I think it's Title 8, I believe, currently would not allow cannabis events in the city.
That's what I thought. That's the end of my questions.
You, Councilmember Lopez, and then Councilmember Bybee.
Oh, I didn't have a question. I have a comment for later.
Thank you, Councilmember Bybee.
I want to thank staff, first of all, for the revised draft. It's come a long way since the initial presentation to the council, and a lot of great changes were made. The one question that I'm still kind of mulling over and not sure, it's the area, the section is kind of vague to me, and it's on 5 of the ordinance, section E, about the reoccurrence, and that a permit can be automatically renewed without the applicant, without someone having to apply for that. And I'm kind of okay with it in some instances, but for instance, I would think that like a carnival permit would need to make an annual application to the staff for that type of an event, as opposed to an art show or a spring and fall type of event. And so Daniel, could you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, the intent of this provision was to somewhat reduce the burden for those organizations that do recurrent events of having to submit the same materials year after year after year. But I mean, it could be clarified or narrowly written so that it really focuses only on events that maybe occur periodically within a year, not necessarily year after year. Because as I noted, I mean, some events may occur once or twice a year. And so if they do it the second time, they can contain that proposal within the initial application so that we don't require more than one application in 1 year. But as I agree, as written, it is fairly broad and somewhat intentionally so.
Well, I would just not want the onus to be on the staff to have to track, let's say, when a carnival permit is going to occur, because sometimes the dates change from, within a month or so of the date of the previous year. But there needs to be some pre-planning for that and some conditions and assurances that the proper permitting procedures are being followed. So I I just feel that's more of a burden on the staff to have to track that. And you may not know that the carnival permit is occurring, and all of a sudden there's a major problem that staff wasn't aware of because they didn't submit an application. So that's where my concern is, as opposed to just a smaller type event like an art show.
I see. Mary, you're muted.
I give up. Any other comments? So my thought is that
I thought we were on questions, not comments.
if I may ask my own question,
Sorry, okay.
Daniel, is the information that you're receiving okay to move forward with the ordinance tonight, or what would you recommend as we continue the discussion?
Well, I mean, if the council has any specific revisions that the majority of you agree that you would like, we can certainly incorporate those into this initial draft. But I'm not necessarily hearing any request or revisions at this time.
Okay, so we'll make sure we cover that when we do the final comment section.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we will open the public hearing. Do we have anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
Yes, now we have Ken Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, please join us.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Ken Johnson from the Chamber of Commerce. I want to start by thanking Director Kermoyan and Daniel for their collaborative approach in working with us and understanding our position on some of these items, and the fact that they incorporated a number of ideas into the ordinance, I think is great. It goes back a long time when we first met. In fact, Daniel, when we talked yesterday, said I was the last hand he shook before COVID. And so on the other side of it, a lot of these things mean we're going to be out of COVID because we're going to be having events again. So that's exciting. But there are a couple of things in here. I love the approach of the 3 tiers. I think that makes sense. Under the general standards, though, it's really nitpicky. But under parking lots, it says that it shall not interfere with vehicular or pedestrian circulation. An event that's in a parking lot is going to interfere with pedestrian circulation and parking. So I would rather it be would just suggest it changing to allow for adequate vehicular and pedestrian circulation as opposed to interfering with it. That's a more positive way of saving it. On the items that require a temporary use permit through the full process, there's still a couple on there that I'm looking at from a business standpoint and say, if I were going to have a one-time food truck event as a fundraiser, for example, would I pay $1,600 to have an application if that's going to cut into my profits? And the answer is I wouldn't. So if the intention is to allow an event, it becomes restrictive just in the cost of the permitting to do something like that. On the late night holiday business hours, I feel like that's already covered under the general provisions with an 11 o'clock restriction on closing. Noise is also covered, as is parking. So I would hate to punish a small retailer that would want to have longer hours if it can be moved to the allowed with general provisions, if that's already can be covered there. I didn't know about the outdoor music shows, if that would include things like first Fridays or second Saturdays with the DCBA and music that they might have outside. I didn't know if that would be covered or not. So I guess what I'm talking about is maybe just an earlier part of the process that might say, if an event offers a benefit to the community in some way or serves the general goodwill of Campbell, could it be considered in the allowed with the general standards as opposed to having to go through the full permitting process? And that, again, I guess that determination would go with the community director as well. But it just, I wouldn't want to see something become cost prohibitive to somebody who wants to do something for the benefit of the community. And then the last thing I would say, and in talking to Daniel, I felt pretty about this, is that with the current state of emergency and your flexibility with business operations in town, I would really suggest that stays at the forefront and that the flexibility remains until we're out of a state of emergency before someone might have to go through a full process of having to pay huge fees if it makes sense during the current situation. So that's my general feedback. And again, I'd like to thank Director Kermoyan and Daniel for their collaborative approach to working with us.
Thank you, Ken. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
There are none.
There are none. Thank you. With that, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion. Is there any discussion? So I would like to go around and Daniel, I think there have been a couple of good comments. Ken Johnson's comments I thought were all quite good, and I would support those. And Councilmember Landry, Councilwoman Landry.
Oh, I'm just back to the limited number per year. I hear what Ken was saying about the fee, and if I had to pay $1,600 and I have a food truck, I am probably not going to do it. But if I got a permit that said I could do it 5 times a year, then it may be worth having them to be able to get the permit. So I'd like to hear what other council members have to say about that. For instance, placement of 2 cargo containers. Can you do that all year? You know, is it restricted in time? And then I don't know if we need to make a clarification on that cannabis activities are not allowed, or if that by default is covered under our existing ordinances.
If I could answer the last 2 comments there, in terms of the storage containers, that would be allowable when there's an active building permit. So long as there's active construction, they would be allowed to maintain them. But once there's no longer an active building permit, then the expectation is that the containers go away. In terms of cannabis activity, since that's already covered in other areas of the city's municipal code, and I suppose also technically the zoning code, which prohibits any activity inconsistent with state or federal law, I think we're pretty well covered.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Vice Mayor Reznikov?
Thank you. So just in general, I want to thank Ken, because Ken, your comments are spot on. And by the way, in bigger, more general terms, thank you for what you're doing, hanging in with the chamber and under really difficult times and continuing traditions and stuff. So I appreciate that. The comments, for example, in the parking lot are very good, because we don't want to be too restrictive where things would not get approved. I think that something to do with the benefit of Campbell goodwill is a good idea. I don't know if that's too broad, and I would ask Director Kermoyan if that's something that makes sense to him. The most important thing I think I heard, and Councilmember Landry just alluded to it, is to make sure the permitting costs are not restrictive. Because if they are, then it basically undermines this. And Ken said something at the end about specifically during state of emergency. And that's really important. I'd like to make it as easy as possible while we're in that state of emergency, and maybe even a short time after, to make it easy for people to do these uses. So perhaps we could tie those fees in so that while we're under emergency operations or some qualifier of being a state of emergency, that we reduce or waive some of those fees. Long term, they would come back. But let's make it really easy for businesses to step in and be a little proactive and a little creative in what they do, and be able to survive now and even a little bit into the state when we leave emergency. So I like everything Ken said in particular. I'd like to make it a little easier on fees in general, but on fees specifically during emergency operations.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you to staff for this process, and the chamber, and Ken for your engagement, and in addition, your comments tonight, Ken, which I think, like some of my colleagues, open to incorporating some of that feedback, which is very helpful. I also wanted to add to that discussion to some of the comments that the Vice Mayor is making, that It's my understanding that we'd still have a nonprofit rate, which would be half the normal rate for some of these fees, and then staff can clarify if that is the case. But maybe a way to incorporate that into some of these concerns. I don't know what the definition, if it's goodwill or to the public is too broad, but maybe a way to do that. And then the other just general comment I was going to make is that during my discussions with staff on this topic, it wasn't clear to me what some of I didn't see definitions in the ordinance for some of these terms. And staff followed up with sending some of the definitions that we have on our ordinances, and I still didn't see some of those definitions. I don't want to hold up moving this forward contingent on that. I would just put that forward as a comment in case that's something that needs to be done. That would be helpful.
And I'd just like to pick up on something that Councilmember Lopez just said. We do have service organizations that do provide community benefit and do have storage containers that are located throughout the city. And I'm hoping we aren't precluding those as community benefit items. Are we okay on that, Daniel?
I'm not actually aware of those types of containers. I mean, strictly speaking, if they're on private property, they're very limited in terms of their use.
I think there's one, Lions Club has one at the Home Depot site, which
Are we talking about collection type?
No. If they help in, I'm trying to think, if we have the Valentine Fun Run and a service club helps organize that with banners and whatever, and then they have a storage container with that kind of thing in it. I assume we're still okay with that, but I just wanted to check.
Well, I mean, that's, again, not something that's currently contemplated by this ordinance or really any provision in the code if it's located on private property, but it's never been an issue.
Okay. I'm just, well, at Home Depot would be a place where you would have containers anyway, so I don't know. So as long as you don't think it's an issue. Do you have input sufficient that you would like to come back with a final version? What is your thought?
I think we have enough. Do you agree, Paul?
Why don't we just recap? I mean, I've captured some of them, but if we could just recap on them, that would help.
Sure.
Okay.
So looks like we have some guidance to provide more specificity regarding the number of events that could occur per year. Modify the language as it pertains to parking circulation, just make sure it's adequate. Look at reducing the fee structure, though that would require amending the fee schedule under separate action. And then also look at providing for, I guess, a wider understanding of a type of temporary use that would have a larger community benefit. I think that latter one may require a little more definition of what we mean for use that provides a benefit to Campbell.
Yeah, I think what I was looking at that was as it relates to the fees, right? And at least that's what I understood. So if there was an activity that realized the community benefit, that the operator shouldn't be penalized with a higher fee, it should be a lower fee. That's kind of what I heard.
Yeah, and what I was thinking is if using your example of the Lions Club having a container at Home Depot, how would that fit in?
Well, yeah, that's another topic altogether, but it would have to be associated with a temporary use. If it's there every day for 365 days a year, then that would be a permanent use.
Okay.
Your example, Madam Mayor, of the you know, if like the Lions Club or Rotary were helping the fun run, then I think we can understand that that would all be worked into that activity, and then it would go away right after the activity.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Bybee, but I have a comment from the city attorney.
Yes, I just wanted to point out, it sounds like we do not have specific language for these amendments at this time, so we're probably going to have to continue this and bring back the language for first reading for the city council.
I would concur with that. Councilmember Bybee?
I just had one comment related to the fees. And one item that stands out in my mind is that allow with a permit would be a car show. And to me, that would provide a community benefit. And a lot of car shows don't charge people to go to the car show. So they're not really making any money. It's more of a community benefit. So to me, it seems like they shouldn't have to pay unless it was a fundraiser for that particular. So I know it's kind of splitting hairs, but I would just like to see something like that where they don't have an ability to pay, that they would be able to, provide the show without having to pay.
So it's a revenue generating community benefit, but, or a non-revenue, it's a non-revenue generating community benefit.
I don't know. That just stuck out at me because I go to car shows and I don't pay to go. So.
Yes, I know you do. So
Mayor?
Vice Mayor Resnikoff.
Just be careful from what you just said. Just be careful because they don't charge to go in, could still be a revenue generator. So I've seen events like car things and Rotary things. There may be no admission and no cost to the attendees, but there's usually a revenue generating part of it, right? So let's just be careful how we define it, I guess.
Okay.
Have to work on that a little bit, but I think this discussion's been very productive. And thanks, staff, again. It has been a slog to get this to really be a positive document for our city and our nonprofits and simplify life for everybody, staff, not the least. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And would we like to take a 5-minute break? It is now 9:07. Shall we come back at 9:15? Is that okay? All right, we'll be back at 9:15. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We will now rejoin our meeting.
Mayor, as you know, I'll be recusing on this issue.
Thank you very much.
The proximity of my house to the police site. So I'm gonna mute and remove my video during this item.
Thank you very much. So we are, am I down here? Yeah. We are at the agenda item under unfinished business, item 12. Receive and consider conceptual design alternatives for the police operation building. Select a preferred design alternative and provide feedback to staff. And we're going to have a presentation. I'm not sure who's starting. Let's see. Introduced by the city manager and Public Works Director Todd Capurso.
Yes, I will go ahead and kick it off. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wishing you all a happy Groundhog Day. So I'm going to give a little background and then we're going to hand it over to the more formal part of the presentation. But in the interest of having a new council member and anybody watching, I thought I'd cover just a little bit additional background. As you all know, Measure O was crafted back in July of 2018 and passed by a supermajority of Campbell voters in November of that same year. But as we all know, its history goes back even earlier, perhaps even more than a decade. Over the year that followed the passage of the measure, RFPs were developed with the participation of a council subcommittee to engage services of design firms for each the police and library buildings respectively. In May of 2020, council authorized hiring two design firms, LPA for the police building and Jason Architecture for the library building. This action established a path forward on this journey with the goal of completing the design documents for each project by the end of 2021. Before we can get there, there is much work for us to do. Unfortunately, we are still relatively early in the design process. We are currently at the conceptual design phase, which is defined as 15%. There are many important decisions to be made at this stage, and the parameters for each project must be established. However, not all of the details will be resolved at this point. We all recognize that there are issues that must and will be resolved as the design progresses. That is also part of the journey. 3 weeks ago, the council was presented with conceptual designs for both the library and the police buildings. While there was a consensus for a preferred library option, there were many unresolved issues regarding the police building. Council specifically requested a second conceptual design option, as well as additional information and some clarification. With that in mind, the goal tonight is to present and compare two distinct conceptual designs. One new one in addition to the one that was presented 3 weeks ago. Staff is requesting that council consider the alternatives, select a preferred option, and provide feedback that can feed into the next phase of design, which would be the schematic design, also defined as the 30% level. And that council can then review what comes out of that process in approximately 3 months. In order to take us through this information tonight, you're going to hear from our lead architect, which is Jeremy Hart from LPA, for the majority of the presentation. He'll be supported by Jim McLaren of NWL Architects, who's also on the team. At the conclusion of the presentation and answering any clarification questions along the way, we'll hand it over to Tim Borden to help facilitate this discussion. And he will also pull in Chief Gary Berg to help provide some operational support and perspective. And then I should also note that we are joined by Ryan Craven of HL Construction, who is the construction management firm on this project as well. And then at the conclusion of that, as part of the council discussion and answering additional questions, the rest of the city team, including the city manager, myself, and the city engineer, all stand by to help out as well. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy Hart of LPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Madam Mayor, members of the council, it's a pleasure to be back. As Todd alluded to, we were here 3 weeks ago, and needless to say, we've been busy in that time. So we have a lot to share. I'm going to, I need to share my screen. Give me one. Button.
We're going to have to ask Ryan from IT. Can you allow Jeremy to share the screen, please, Ryan?
I think I've got it.
Okay, very good.
Share. So hopefully everybody's seeing the screen with the opening title slide.
Yes.
All right, we'll dive right in. So we wanted to start with an overview of the project scope. Now the scope as defined in the RFP was quite detailed. For the sake of brevity, we've tried to boil it down to some of the highlights. But to the point that Todd was making, the work that we've done is really just the first 15% at this stage of the game. Per the RFP, the scope was divided into Task A, review the existing documentation and to develop a benchmark study. We've done that. Task B, develop a work plan, a cost plan, and a project schedule. That's done and been submitted. The bulk of the time that we spent in this first 15% was really around the programming and space needs. And Jim McLaren from MWL is going to walk us through that process a little bit and what resulted from that, because that really drove how big the spaces were, where the spaces wanted to be, and how they operated to maximize efficiency of program and use of the building. With Task C complete, we were then able to launch into the site planning and analysis and building concept alternatives. And we took those two tasks concurrently, where we really were looking at a series of options. And you'll see as we present here today, we went through, per the RFP, we went through more than 2 site layouts, and we went through more than 3 building layouts as we developed it. And throughout this whole process, while it was during the programming phase and the site planning and building concept phase, we were constantly checking our work, checking our progress against the overall project budget, because that is our goal here, is to deliver a project to you that is on budget, a project that the city can afford and that meets the bounds set by Measure O. So really, that's where we've spent the bulk of our time up to this point. Should we receive direction from council tonight, our process is to proceed into schematic design documents, and we will spend about 8 to 10 weeks working through schematic design documents and preparing an update to the cost estimate. And even at the end of that process, where we have all of our engineers and designers contributing to the process, we will still only have what we call 15% design documents. And then after that, we move into Task G, design development documents, or 30% level documents. But that's where we are today in our scope. So next, we will dive into the program and what came from the programming and space planning analysis. And so I will turn it over to Jim McLaren from MWL to walk us through this.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm hoping you can hear me okay.
We can.
In a very general fashion, what we tend to do is work closely with our clients to look at how they do what they do and try to present operational overlays to allow for the most efficiency we can derive during that programming process. So we broke down the project into a series of hierarchies, such as you see here on the screen: public areas, which is fairly modest, public lobby, restrooms, things like that. Administrative areas. You'll see the biggest space in the building is listed as shared staff areas, and that's because it collects all the spaces that people tend to need and share. Instead of programming buildings where there's an administrative conference room and a conference room with an investigator, a conference room in records or associated with each individual component of the building, we try to gather up all those spaces and put them into shared zones so that anyone in the building can use them without having to, if you will, go through someone else's functional space to get to them. So the shared staff areas, which is large, has conference rooms, it has copy machines, it has spaces for the lockers There's a training room in that space. So mechanical rooms, janitor closets, things like that. Then it breaks out pretty standard investigative spaces, patrol, intake and processing, which is very limited. There's just a space where officers can park a vehicle undercover, bring in a person of interest, and do basic processing or hold them long enough for an interview. That's not a jail, if you will. We have space for traffic records, dispatch and communications, evidence and property, and an operational center that could be used during emergencies, that is shared as a multipurpose room. So where a lot of our clients over the years have built something that they would use for an emergency operations center and then leave them, the decision here was to make a space that could be used for multipurpose training, in-service training, community meetings, neighborhood watch formations, outreach and training, things like that. And in the event of an emergency, could be used for a operations center. To that, we add stairs and elevators, and a grossing factor, what we refer to as an efficiency factor sometime, which is in this case was very modest. It's at 12%, which is the corridors that get you from place to place, wall thicknesses, structure, the things that add square footage to a building, but aren't really the actual physical space. Next, please. Now, California has a very, very rigid building Essential Services Building Act. Now it's part of Title 24. And after Loma Prieta and the Northridge quakes, it was strengthened and made very specific. So any spaces that are used for first responder, emergency support, hospitals, emergency control towers at the airport, fire stations, and police stations fall into that category. And so they're more expensive to build because they have an importance factor to beef them up for strength. So they have a greater seismicity structure to them. But not all spaces that the police department needs need to be that heightened rigidity or resiliency. We have a lot of storage for evidence and property, some utilitarians type storage, some loading for supplies and things like that. So we broke the building into two components, essential services and what we called non-essential support spaces, so that they could potentially be utilized as part of a repurposing of the existing police station as an option. Next, please. Now, what this came up to was a square footage proposed for 32,403, of which, as the last slide showed, a portion of that would be repurposing spaces that the police would vacate, and then a portion of it would be new. But the total, when based on staffing, comes out to about 390 square feet per staff member. Next, please. So the request was to benchmark this against other facilities, and it's, they're always looking to do that, but there can be an apples, oranges, and kumquats quality to that, because while we've done many facilities all throughout the United States, about 440, I'm getting old. The reality is we have things like buildings like San Francisco's building, which is primarily administrative, new facility across the way in Newark, which has some real similarities. It's being built as part of a civic campus. It has a new police facility, and it makes reuse of an existing building, the old library, which is being replaced for some of the same types of functions we're proposing here for evidence and things like that. And it comes out with the staffing total to about 400. So they're very, very modest and similar. Jeremy and I also just completed the new facility in Salinas, and that building was just dedicated and occupancy taken last year. It came out to about 319 square feet. And then there's three facilities that aren't ours, San Rafael, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy. And each of those, as you can see, vary from 400 to almost 1,000 square feet in Gilroy. So I'm glad mine are the 3 that appear to be lower. um, I'll just let you go ahead, Jeremy, then, and then I can answer questions later when time comes if need be.
Thank you, Jim. So with the program and the size of the building understood, we then progressed into site analysis and understanding. And for us, that site analysis and understanding started with, again, the RFP document. What did the RFP tell us we were to analyze? And that was this area you see in blue shaded on this aerial plan. We've added the red bounding box just to help it stand out even more so. But this really set the limits for what we were to study as we started to analyze how to site the new police building. We also took into consideration, okay, well, what are the amenities that we're dealing with on the site? And that led us to an understanding of what were the parking uses on site. So existing, you have 30 secure parking stalls that the PD currently uses today. That North City Hall parking lot has 54 existing parking stalls. And then the City Hall parking lot along North First Street has 41 existing parking stalls. And so that all started to, again, further inform us of how we would approach the site. We also needed to understand where those existing access points were. You see, we've indicated those in orange here. 2 secure access points existing, 2 existing curb cuts on Grant serving the secure lot. We did some analysis on appropriate setbacks for a 1-story building, a 2-story building. And then also understanding that there is a communications tower that is existing on site and the potential costs associated with relocating that. As an additional constraint, one of the items that we heard in our discussions with the PD was the construction of a new building had to leave the existing police department fully functional and fully operational. So that was a constraint upon our ability to develop the site. What that really led us to was this area you see kind of bounded by the 2 purple lines hatched in this dark gray color, what we've labeled the developable site area. When we take into all those opportunities and constraints, understanding what that really left us with the ability to build a new building. So before we started to dive in and understand how to site the building, there was one more consideration we felt we needed to understand. And so taking an aerial survey provided to us by the city, we wanted to know where the utilities were that ran through the site. So you can see on North First Street dashed in red, this is a joint trench that houses electrical and telecommunications lines that wraps around Grant. Additionally, within North First Street, just on the street side of the curb line, you see in this light blue, we have water lines. And then in the almost quite, but not quite the middle of, but out towards the middle on First Street, there is a sanitary sewer line. And that sanitary sewer line also runs all the way through the middle of Grant. You see this other sort of darker blue line that crisscrosses the site. That's your existing storm line. That storm line serves the parking lot in the front. That City Hall parking lot has some pickups out in the North City Hall lot, has additional storm line pickups in the secure PD lot before it ultimately connects out into Grant. There's also additional sort of connections and inlets in First that carry the water to the storm drain in Grant. So this diagram was comforting to us because we knew that there was utilities that would be easily accessed as we looked at that developable parcel, and also led us to understand, okay, there's likely going to be some rework of the storm line that runs through the parking lots, but that's not to be unexpected. So with our understanding of the sites and constraints, we proceeded to develop a series of site utilization studies. And I won't go into tremendous detail, but we looked at a podium building that maximized parking, built a new 1-story building on a podium with parking underneath. And as we analyzed this study against the budget, the cost of that podium structure proved too big to overcome. And so we really felt like that wasn't an appropriate use because of the cost of that. We did another study that looked at a one-story building on grade that perhaps responded better to the surrounding context of the community. That one-story building on grade really started to limit and impact the amount of parking that we had on site, and still required us to reuse some of that existing PD. We looked at another study that built a new two-story building on grade, had no reuse of the existing PD, built a secure parking lot. And again, as we were looking at the needs of the program and the cost to build that, it still proved quite expensive and had some impacts on parking. We did some additional studies where we mixed two-story new building and podium with lower level. But ultimately, what offered us the greatest flexibility with budget and site use was a new two-story building on grade, somewhat smaller footprint with reuse of the existing PD. And so taking site utilization study E, that really led to the development of additional studies that you'll see here today. Building upon that site utilization study, we proceeded to explore a number of different building program layouts. And again, there's 10 of these. I won't go into a tremendous amount of detail, but we studied a variety of configurations of program, balancing of program on the first and second floor, looking at different access points throughout the site, how we sited the building and its proximity to City Hall. Again, there's more that we looked at, continually working with staff and the PD to constantly refine the program, the stack of the program, and constantly checking these against our prioritization study, where we would factor in the cost of each of these studies and the amount of program that we were able to get, constantly checking ourselves to make sure that we were on track with the budget. And ultimately, through this process of continual refinement, it led us to building layout 10, which was the precursor to the studies that you'll see today. So with that understanding of the site, understanding of the building program and stack, we proceeded into concept design option 1. You saw a version of this at our last presentation. We have made some modifications to this layout in response to feedback that we received. Starting at the top of the page, at the corner of North and First Street, we have pulled the emergency generator away from the corner to help open up those view corridors at the intersection. Also gives us more stacking where we can get cars further off of First Street before they enter into through that secure gate at the Sally Court. Moving that emergency generator brought our total secure parking number down from 77 to 74. And when we analyze the number of secure stalls that the PD has today and the number of stalls in the north parking lot, we have a net loss of 10 stalls overall between those two lots. Our secure access point on Grant is where it was before. We're also showing a little more detail on how that trash enclosure will work, so you can understand that process a little bit, where there is secure access from the secure parking lot to trash enclosure. The trash would then need to be pulled onto the street where the trash truck could dump the dumpsters before putting them away. From the secure parking lot, we have a secure connection from the proposed new building to the existing building, where there'll be those non-essential services that Jim alluded to. We have left the communications tower in place. We have strategically aligned the parking so that it falls within the parking zone, so that we can still park the maximum amount of cars as we can. And then from the public side, we have the public parking lot. This configuration currently provides for 18 stalls for the public to use. When we look at that entire sort of City Hall parking lot that you have today, that's a net loss of 23 parking stalls. We've got access into the lower building. Before I dive into that, I'm going to blow that slide up a little bit and walk you through what we have here. So from the public parking lot, what we envision is an arrival of a sort of a common access point where you can either take this ramp up to the existing City Hall, second floor of City Hall, or you can take a sloping sidewalk down. We're sloping this at 5%, so no handrails would be necessary to travel down this. We've got the run to do that, to take you from this landing pad down to what we're calling a lower courtyard, also providing a stair to take you down to this lower courtyard. As Councilmember Landry pointed out at our last meeting, your path of travel from the parking lot down to the lower level of your existing City Hall and police station building doesn't currently meet code. So with this redesign and the rework of this lower courtyard, we will be correcting the non-compliant path of travel that exists today. Once you arrive down at the lower courtyard, the visitor would have a decision point. They can head north directly into the new police station, or they can head east and go into the lower level of City Hall, like you would today. Moving on to the next page. So this gives us a graphic layout of how that program would work. Coming into that main lobby, the records department right off the main lobby, and then that Department Operations Center multi-purpose room, again, directly off the lobby, allowing outside agencies to come in and access that Operations Center, but still providing secure access from the PD on the inside. Traffic and patrol, readily accessible to the public parking lot. Intake and processing, readily accessible from patrol and the secure Sally Court. And then locker room and training room in the back, with access points into the building in multiple locations to provide ease of flow and functionality for the PD. We move to the second floor. Again, we've got investigative services, administration, PRT, the break room, and dispatch. Dispatch and the break room, both having direct access to a roof deck. Moving forward, we've got a few sections to share with you on, so you can get an understanding of the adjacency and the proximity of the two buildings. So you can see we've sited the new building down so that the finished elevation approximately matches the finished elevation of your existing City Hall building. So that does mean at North First Street, we will have the building down. That also helps us minimize the overall height from the street because we're pushing the building down a little bit. Moving the section back a little bit in through the secure parking lot, you can see the adjacency or proximity of the new building. We've dashed in the City Hall beyond. And then finally, a section cut the other way where you can see the overlap of the long section through the new police station building and your City Hall beyond. You start to see the ramping and the terracing of the site down. This would be that ramp. You see the person sort of entering the second floor of City Hall. So those are the technical diagrams. What do the pictures look like? So this is a view as you would arrive from that existing entry drive into the public parking lot. You get a sense of the adjacency and the overlap of the proposed police department building and the existing City Hall. A bird's eye view might help us better understand some of those relationships. So from that common pad, you have the ramp up to City Hall or the sloping walk that carries you down to that lower level courtyard. And then finally, a view from that lower level courtyard where you start to see that stair that brings you down or that sloping walk that takes you back up to the parking lot. So that is design concept 1. Moving on to concept number 2. So you will see there are a lot of similarities, but we've taken a different approach to a number of issues. We have moved the police department, the new police department building, back closer to Grant Street. That secondary access to North First Street, you'll see we have relocated to Grant. So we still think it's very important to have 2 points of access. Regardless, we would prefer them further apart, but if this is what the site allows, then this is what we want to show. So 2 access points off of Grant, somewhat similar to what you have today, though a little bit better situation. The Sally Court directly off of that secure parking lot. In this scenario, we're getting 61 parking stalls in the secure parking lot, which when we look at those 2 parking lots that exist today, that's a net loss of 23 stalls. Again, we have been able to maintain the communications tower where it is today. And you'll also note we're doing something a little bit different with the secondary access from the 2nd floor of City Hall. In this case, we are taking a stair directly down behind a secure gate that would then take, rather, if you'll remember from the previous option, I should have pointed out, that secondary access carried everybody east towards the Ainsley House. In this scenario, we have a shorter run that carries you to the west and out and directly into that lower courtyard where the public access is. The public parking lot, a little bit better than the previous scenario where we had 18 parking stalls for the public. This scenario has 27 parking stalls for the public. That's still a net loss of 14 parking stalls from what you have currently today. And I'll go to the next slide where we'll blow up how the access works. So doing a little bit of rework to the site here where you'll have a common landing pad that will then, again, give you that decision point. You can ramp up to the 2nd floor of City Hall or ramp down in 3 switchbacks to the lower level of the public or the lower courtyard. Again, providing an opportunity for a stair should you choose to skip the ramp. But that still gives you the opportunity to make the public access to the lower level of City Hall, again, solving your existing non-compliant issues that you have today, or taking you directly into the 1st floor of the new PD building. And here you can start to see in a little more detail how that secondary stair from the 2nd floor of City Hall would work. You'd come out, immediately head down a stair that would then dump you out through a gate into that lower courtyard space. So moving on to the program diagram. Again, from that lower level courtyard, the public access into the lobby, records and the Department Operations Center, both off that lobby, traffic and patrol, intake and processing, all working off of the secure parking lot, with the locker room and training room making up the balance of the 1st floor. And then on the 2nd floor, we've got investigative services, administration, PRT, the break room and dispatch still accessing that roof deck. So the sections through that, the technical sections where we've got the finished floor of the new building at approximately the same elevation as the finished floor of City Hall. This cutting just through the 1st level of the parking lot. Moving the section forward, if you can imagine, we've got this small little overlap of both buildings where you're seeing us cut through both City Hall and the PD building. Ever so slightly. And then this section really starts to illustrate how much, how it opens up the space a bit when we do move the PD closer to Grant and what that looks like. So to the pictures, this again is from the parking lot. We pushed in a little bit. You're forward of where that entry drive is, just to start to see and understand the relationship and the context of the 2 buildings adjacent to each other. This is a bird's eye view where you again can start to see there's that common landing, the ramp taking you up to City Hall, the 3 legs of the switchback ramp that bring you down, and then the stair that brings you directly down. And then we have a couple of views of what that looks like down from the lower level. You're essentially at that corner of the new PD building, you see the ramp and the stair bringing you up. And then a view is as if you had come out of the city hall. We're kind of standing up on the planter so we can see over it a little bit, but coming out of city hall, looking back at the new PD building. And again, you start to see how the ramp starts to terrace the site down and connect the upper and lower spaces together. So those are the two options. As we talked about in the beginning, these are really conceptual studies. We fully expect these designs to evolve and change as we progress through the process. But this gives you a good understanding of the size and the scale and the context of how the two options work together. Bear with me, we're almost done. I wanted to touch on the project budget. So I believe this is the same slide you saw in the last presentation as it relates to the project budget. And if I can walk you through these numbers a little bit, with a little bit of detail, we've got the new construction, the new police department building, just the building itself, 26,579 square feet. It works out to roughly $561 a square foot, giving us about just under $15 million for the new building. To renovate the existing building to fit our needs, we've got 5,575 square feet. It's cheaper to renovate the existing building than to build new. So we get some savings there. We're able to build that square footage for just over $2 million. And then when we look at the amount of site work we're touching and the dollars per square foot, about $51.45 per square foot, just over $3 million. And so that gives us our total estimated construction cost of $21.1 million. We are watching at this stage of the game a series of alternates that we want to keep track of. Things that we would like to add for operational and functional efficiencies to the project, but currently aren't in the budget. And so as you'll see when we do move forward through the project, and as the budget allows, we will start to capture some of these add alternates back into the budget. I think it's also important to note that at this stage of the game, our budget does carry a healthy contingency. About 10% of this $20 million is budget contingency for things that we don't quite understand, things that we haven't quite figured out. And that's fairly standard at this conceptual stage of the process. But if I can dive deeper into some of the numbers, perhaps in response to some of the comments that we received at the last council meeting. When we talk about buildings, what they cost, and you hear people use the term cost per square foot, I think it's important to understand what's included in a cost per square foot number. And typically that cost per square foot number includes the cost of the buildings and the cost of the site added together and then divided by the total square foot of improvements. So when we do that math, where we take our building area divided by the total project cost, we've got the 26,579 square feet of new construction, the 5,575 square feet of renovated construction divided by the $20 million. That really drives us to our project cost right now is coming in around $625 per square foot. But if we start thinking about comparative cost analysis and what that looks like against a similar project, that really is about, unless you're comparing a renovated project versus our project, the dollars are a bit skewed because we have savings that we're realizing by reusing the existing PD. So if we take our new construction cost, which is the $14,920,000 number, plus our site number, and divide that by our square footage, our new construction cost of our essential service facility is much closer to $681 a square foot. Looked at another way, to build our total project program of 32,154 square feet as new construction, it would have cost us an additional $1.1 million. So that's money that we're saving or program we're able to realize by reusing the existing PD. So next, I'm going to bring back our benchmark study so that we can understand how our project relates to the buildings that we studied in our benchmark study. So again, looking at our $626 a square foot or our $681 square foot for the new essential service construction for our project, and how does that compare to what San Rafael PD, which was completed this year, cost? That came in at $573 a square foot. Morgan Hill turned out not to be a really good comp because it was a renovated commercial building. So we've left that one off because that was a renovation, didn't have any new construction. The Newark PD that Jim referred to, he's worked on. That project, again, either it's just finished construction or it's finished construction middle of last year. That's coming in around $654 a square foot. And then the Salinas PD project is coming in at $644 a square foot. That number, I think, is driven a little bit higher. They've got a proficiencies firearms range. They've got a crime lab. So they've got some more sophisticated equipment that's driving the cost of their project up. And then Gilroy PD coming in around $625 a square foot. So we did look at our total project cost as it relates to the projects we studied in the benchmark study. And then finally, the last topic I'm going to walk us through is our schedule. So nothing new here. Here we are today, the red line, February 2nd. As Todd reminded us all, Groundhog Day. We are here at the council meeting today to ask for your permission to proceed into the schematic design phase of the project. Should you approve us to proceed into the schematic design phase, we are going to spend the next 8 or 9 weeks working on with our engineers to start to really engineer and develop some more sophisticated understanding of the project and its components, at which time we will go back to our cost estimator and update the cost estimate based upon 15% schematic design documents with some level of engineering insight. We'll update our cost estimate and then come back to you. Our wish or our goal is to come back to you in May with an update on the project status before proceeding into design development. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. I'll turn it over to, I believe, Tim at this point. Would you like me to stop sharing the screen? You're muted, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So I appreciate the thorough presentation, Jeremy. I think that I'm hoping that what you saw tonight is a little bit more descriptive of some of the background work that occurred up to when you saw it last on January 11th. And then I hope that you'll find it responsive to some of the alternatives and some of the comments that we heard loud and clear on January 11th. And I think before we turn it over to the council and mayor and council for questions, if we could ask Chief Berg if he has any thoughts he could share as far as the operations that would work and how the operations would work with the second alternative that Jeremy showed us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tim. Just wanted to piggyback onto Jeremy's presentation and kind of highlight the journey that we've been on so far and really recognize the work of internal staff and LPA and MWL to get to where we are today, because I think as you better see tonight, there were a lot of steps to get us to the two options that you see in front of you tonight. And in order to get there, there were a lot of iterations, and I think probably Jeremy and Jim can attest to my many emails and tweaks and changes that we requested throughout the process. And I think that's part of the reason why we had 11 or 12 different options wherever we are now. But at the end of the day, think everybody in the police department and city is extremely happy with the programming, the layout, and the operational efficiencies of how those different pieces fit together. But I'm also want to point out that during this process, we looked for creative solutions so that we could work within the confines of our budget, because obviously that drove a lot of what we were doing and the decisions that we were making. And I wanted to highlight that in working with LPA and MWL, we looked at things like gender neutral locker rooms and gender neutral public restrooms, and looked at ways that we can save money while still having all the space that we need. And then in terms of the building, I also wanted to mention that as I think you all know, the community partnership that the police department has had and continues to have is extremely important. And like some comments at the last meeting, we wanted to make this building inviting to the public. You'll see that we put the glass on the front to have that transparency feel, to have it inviting, because this is really representative of not just the police department, but the entire city. So a lot of that thought came into it, and we looked at best practices from these other police departments locally and out of state who have been building police departments, looked at how we can incorporate what works best for police departments, taking safety and security into account, and kind of wrapping that all up in a project that we're excited about. And I think, as Jeremy mentioned, falls within the budget constraints. So I think I just want to make it clear that there were definitely concessions as we got to this point. This is not the first choice. But we understand where the budget is, and we understand what we're working within. And within those confines, we're all very, very excited for what we have. We're excited about the possibilities, and we're very excited to get to the next step of schematic design. But if there's any questions specifically for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Gary. So Mayor, go ahead and turn it back over to you to go through questions. Again, at the end of this, what we'd like to be able to do, the goal tonight is to get to a consensus on selecting one of these alternatives that we can move into schematic design for. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the information. Obviously very helpful and useful. I think I will just offer that I think there's been some significant communication problems on the project that have gotten us to a point now where I think I and perhaps other council members have some serious concerns. It doesn't mean that we can't move forward. We probably have some choices here tonight, but I would like to clarify that there are some substantive communication problems. And I just wanted to understand, Todd, did the scope of work change in the consultant's contract versus what was in the RFP?
No, it did not. Not as far as I know.
Okay. So you had mentioned we're at 15% tonight, and by the contract, 15% isn't until the next phase. So the presentation has that discrepancy there. The scope of work that is important for us, and I'll simply saying this to allow other council members to ask questions. But for me, I think it's important to know that we had very specific ballot measure language and very specific contract language. And what you presented tonight doesn't fit with that. So I'll let other people ask their questions, and then I'll try and come back with my questions and with some specific comments. So council members, any questions? Councilwoman Landry, and then Councilmember Lopez.
Why don't you let Sergio go first?
Councilmember Lopez, you have the floor.
Sure, thank you. I certainly appreciate the Mayor, your comments, and as well as all the work that's gone to this point. I just also I do have a question, but I just want to note that I think I can speak for all of us that we all want to make the project succeed and help it be successful. I certainly do. That's where our comments are coming from. I know, but definitely appreciate the work that's gone to this point. I was hoping to have a little bit more background, and this presentation also helpful, going a little bit into more detail and background. Maybe a question for you, Jeremy, but could you speak more to the contingencies and where that amount is coming from, if that's an industry standard, or just elaborate on that a little bit more? The type specifically.
The design contingency that we're currently carrying in the budget at around 10% is an industry standard that we will carry. And as we progress the documents from where we are today through schematic design and design development, that contingency will come down. As we start to define more and know more about the project, the contingency number will continue to go smaller and smaller. And ultimately, by the time you would bid the project, the contingency on the design end that you would carry would be zero, because your bid is an actual, what somebody's willing to pay for it. So at the end of schematic design, we could see the contingency coming down to about 7.5%. And at the end of design development, the contingency might be 5%. It's just how because we haven't engineered the project, we haven't taken all the drawings all the way through, and so it's one of the ways in the industry that we help sort of protect the project from those unknowns and those uncertainties.
And if I could just add, just to kind of as a reminder, in the common Measure O budget between the library and the PD building, there is still a construction contingency of 10% that has not been allocated out of that amount yet. So a lot of times you'll hear a construction contingency. That's not for new things that we think of, but it's for unforeseen conditions that occur during construction. So there is 10% that is actually carried, and it will likely be allocated later in the design process, but right now is in that common budget.
Okay for now? Any other council members? Councilmember Landry?
Oh, and first.
Councilmember Bybee?
I have a question probably for Chief Berg. First of all, I want to thank the project team for the presentation tonight. It was very helpful, very thorough, really helped me to understand the differences between what was proposed and the revision, and to clarify some of the questions and concerns that were raised at the last meeting. The question I have has to do with the secured parking. And I see that there's been a reduction from option 1 to option 2. And I want to check or ask the chief, does that reduction meet the needs of the PD? Is that a compromise? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, kind of back to what I had said, we understand where we are with the budget, and there are concessions and prioritization. So like the 2 exits that we were talking about, ideally that exit really should be onto a different street, but understanding the site plan and the layout, that really probably isn't feasible. So we're making that concession for the 2 exits to be onto Grant for that safety measure. In terms of the parking, the reduction from option 1 to option 2 is workable. It doesn't cause any major issues, and we feel positive about that number and working within it.
And what about future growth? Was that taken into consideration in
For parking or for the building?
for parking needs, right? If you know, new personnel is added in the future.
Well, I mean, when we started the project, we were originally talking about underground parking, and soon realized that was not even an option. When it comes to parking, I mean, from my understanding, and maybe Jeremy can answer better than I, but assuming we went with option number 2, I don't know that there really is any room for growth for secure parking. With that said, if we increase staffing levels or the number of vehicles we have, then obviously we would look to the other parking alternatives that exist on the Civic Center. But I mean, I will say that the secure parking is really a priority for us. There's a number of different factors, and you can look at the news with improvised explosive devices being put on police cars, surveillance on police cars. We, in our current secure backlot, we've had individuals jump the fence and were found inside our actual police cars. So that security for not only our marked and unmarked cars, but also for our employees who are pretty visible is an important part of this design.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're on mute, Liz.
I know, go. I'm trying to get down to my mute, but unmute. Go ahead.
Okay, you guys see my nice happy face? I'll start out by making a comment. I am very appreciative of all the work you guys did. You really listened. You addressed the majority of the comments that I had, and I just want to say how appreciative I am, and I hope that we have a better project out of it. So quick questions, and then I'll make more comments. I know you didn't do a new detailed cost estimate, but as a magnitude of scale, by moving the building away from the hillside and pushing it so that there's more room, is there like a 10% cost savings on the site planning or site work? The fact you don't need as much waterproofing on the wall, just the general sense of, are we going to save money?
I would say that, in the grand scheme of things, our site numbers are rough order of magnitude based upon the footprint of site that we're touching. We moved the building, but we didn't really change the footprint, the amount of site quantity that we're touching, because that limit, because it still brought us up to the existing ramp up to City Hall. So that didn't change. At this level of design and this level of understanding, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that we saved anything by making this move. Now, we may realize that as we start to progress the project, but I don't feel comfortable committing to that at this point.
Fair enough, thank you. The second floor now of the existing building, it's not cantilevered all the way to the east, it's coming down to the west. Trivial question, but is that emergency exit only, or would you see that as a staff entrance on a regular basis?
I'd really defer to staff on how they intend to operate that. I do believe that I haven't analyzed it, but I think I was told that exit is required for egress. Currently, staff uses it for access as well because it's a convenience stair. Whether we wanted to keep it a convenience stair, operationally, I think it could be, but that's up to city staff to determine.
Okay, minor question. I'm going to ask you about the schedule, and this may go to Todd or Tim. This contract was written that we have a stopping point and we make a decision of whether we go with the traditional low bid or if we go to a design build situation. According to your schedule, the city council update in May, is at the 15%, and then you go to design development at 30, but there's not a council meeting in between. At what point then in the schedule are we making the decision on low bid versus design build?
I'll take a shot at that, and Todd can jump in if you'd like. But I think that we'd like to get that decision in May. I think May will be that'll be a big meeting. So we're hoping to share the schematic design with you if we're able to move forward after tonight. We're hoping to share the environmental assessment with you at that time, and then also have the discussion about whether it should be a design bid build or design build at that time.
Okay, thank you. I'll reserve my comments for after public.
Okay, thank you, council members. So as always, I get engaged with our projects, and this is a project that is probably the most significant project the city has undertaken in 50 years. And so the responsibility of council members is obviously a major aspect of our responsibilities and our fiduciary responsibilities. So there was a lot of thought put into the RFP and the scope of services, such that there could be confidence at various points as to how the project related. And the project is important not just for PD. It clearly needs to meet PD's requirements, but it also needs to meet the city's requirements. And that is that it has to be supportive of the overall image and functionality of the Civic Center and all the staff that work together for the city. That's not to say that PD isn't the most important or one of the most important. It's saying that the city council has an obligation to understand how this project is going to work for the city as a whole. So when I look at the project and ask my questions, I'm looking for where, as I say, I believe there's some significant communication hiccups that are leading to areas of my particular concern. So I mentioned the one, which is, are we at 15% now, or are we going to 15%? That's kind of a confusion. And after the meetings, the last few meetings and the comments that have come about, I tried to go back and give myself a hard time. So you'll know I give myself as hard, if not harder time than I give the rest of you, to figure out why I feel so strongly that there are challenges here. So the task D in the scope of work. So the way I read the contracts, the tasks, tasks C, D, and E are taking us to where we are now. And where we are now is the building concept alternatives. And it says, based on an approved program, which we don't have, space needs, data, feedback, and all of that, develop 3 viable and feasible building concepts for the new building. So that's what I was anticipating. And in order to get there, there was the step about the programming, and it had very specific requirements about what that programming would do. It's, spreadsheet identifying the proposed elements and access current parking conditions and future parking needs for the project. And it goes on with about a dozen different requirements. And then you go to task D, which is the site planning analysis. And this is the one that was so important because council and staff knew that making the magnitude of change for a library and a police station on the Civic Center campus was no small task. And what was asked, and I don't believe has been done, and I the assumptions that you presented about the parking and the layout of some of the buildings, the parking lots I'll show you in one of your slides, clearly miss the fact that the Civic Center is a communal civic center, that the City Hall functions are essential to city services, and to have the PD project take over the Civic Center area of City Hall, I think misses an important aspect of what was tried to be asked for in this Task D. It says identify a minimum of 2 optimal locations and site layouts for the northwest quadrant of the CCC, Community Center, Civic Center. It says conduct a site analysis and graphically show sites and building improvements with massing diagrams. Identify programs and events that occur within the Civic Center complex to evaluate the impact from the new police officers building. Recommend mitigation measures. Submit reports on the site plan and analysis so that it can be discussed. There is this, your starting point of saying that that was the police department parking lot was not valid as far as I know how that parking lot functioned. Staff from City Hall all parked there. The front parking lot is for staff, but you'll notice we signaged it off so that staff had places to park, but also public parking, okay? And if you go to what you call the police parking lot, all of that parking was available during the day to staff. And then at the off hours, nights and weekends, and for all the events, such as music in the park, all of that parking was available to the public. The downtown merchants all count on the parking in City Hall, which is restricted only until 5 o'clock, is all for our downtown businesses. The parking lot by the museum is for the downtown businesses. So to me, there's a real misunderstanding of how this campus works and functions for the community, and how the police building and its functions needs to fit in. That's not to say that there can't be substantive changes. The scope of work allows for an analysis to understand how the building proposals fit into the overall and what we can do to fix them. That was not presented until kind of like an afterthought on the 11th. And I'm going to show you, you have option 1 site plan, and there's no numbers on the pages I have, but you have on both options 1 and option 2 site plan, you have specifically done what was specifically excluded. The parking lot, the secured parking lot is intruding into the community Orchard City Green. It's intruding into the historic site plan for the Ainsley House, which is on the National Register. The intent of the initial scopes of work, tasks C, D, and E, was to try and get all of this out so that you didn't get so far down and didn't get so far engaged in solutions. Now, I've been told that this is early on and you're willing to be flexible and change, which I appreciate. And I feel this core basic work wasn't done. And when I look at the program document that was asked for, what I don't see is the opportunity for an honest discussion about what's the best use of the money. So in the, and I'm segueing over, but I'll try and come back. In the paperwork for the bond, It specifically talked about the new police station and the safe, efficient library and all of that, but it said renovate and make seismically safe existing police building for other city purposes. So coming back and utilizing that whole lower level for police functions was a big surprise. Making use of it for parking cars that are damaged for whatever reason makes a lot of, you have to disrupt the entire structure of an existing building to park derelict cars. My question is that the best use of the money? My question has to do with on the programming. It would be much better. I think Councilmember Bybee said it the last time. We all expected the PD to be in a new building. It's in entire function programming to be in the new building. That's what we'd all like to see. I certainly would like to see, I will say. So what is it about the program that we can discuss that maybe takes care of the lower level of the police building, which was intended for the people in City Hall? It was intended to be the expansion space that people in City Hall desperately need. And that's an obligation that I feel I, as a council member, have towards the bond measure and evaluating police in the context of the city and the city overall functions. So if you look at what is it that's the best value? So one of the criteria in the document is to be energy efficient, it is to be resilient, and there's another word in there. And that didn't come out in any of these discussions. We did talk briefly in June or July that the city has an all-electric building code for residential, that the state is going that way. And obviously, you know by now, San Francisco, San Jose, and every place else is going that way. It was a specific requirement in the RFP analysis. We do have, as part of being part of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, which neither of your firms probably know much about, I have mentioned, there's $150,000 or more available for resilient construction. And the PD building, as much as I'd love to see it split with the library, the PD is an essential services building and it needs that resilience. There is also a free design service on how to evaluate energy efficiency in your design with equipment. How would your photovoltaics work? How do the new battery systems work? Even if you couldn't go to a whole photovoltaic battery backup system, maybe you could operate the majority of the time on that. And instead of needing this massive greenhouse gas emitting fume filled generator, you could make it half that size. So my question is, early on, these initial efforts were intended to kind of eke out, break out, challenge, and say, can we do this? Is this the right way to do it? We may end up doing what you've proposed, but I think the city as a whole and PD have lost the benefit of what was an attempt to achieve. And I just think that there was better value spent. The canopy over this plaza area, to me, is it worth $50,000? Is a private deck just for PD appropriate given the context of all city workers? And is it worth the money that it would cost? Can we spend the money better? Even if it meant building a bigger building to get things into the main building as opposed to under the existing PD space. And I have not heard or seen anything that provides this dialogue, and I'm so sorry you can't see my hands moving, this dialogue of how this is such an incredible, wonderful opportunity that every one of us is committed to making it the best project possible, to make it the best facility for the police department possible. We have an equal responsibility to make it the best possible project for the city. And I bring in sustainability again because the price, if you're bringing in all new gas systems to feed the building systems, it's very expensive to do that. There are lots of studies that show that doing more electric is actually cost savings. But the cost of operating the building in the long run is going to be much greater because of gas service, because the price of gas is going up and up and up because there's less and less of it being used. So that's one of the reasons that a lot of cities are making their efforts to eliminate the gas because they know it's going up, never mind the commitment to eliminating greenhouse gas in our world. So that all of that was intended to come out. And I appreciate that you treated the PD as your client, but the client is the city. Your contract is with the city. And we needed to have this kind of dialogue. And I can be much more specific, but I don't want to spend all my time. I just would encourage you to read the language that was in the ballot proposition and the language in the ballot proposition which said the object and purpose of the bond. And I think we've lost sight of that. It's not to say that we can't do all these things. I mean, to have a secured police department parking lot was way over the top for any previous discussions. Maybe it's where we are now. The world has changed. I don't know that. And I'm not going to predetermine that I can say it's not the right thing. But the scope was there in these early phases to try and pull this information out so that when we got to the phase of figuring out what the right building was, that none of this mattered. We were all comfortable that we were doing it in a logical way that made the best sense for the city and the best sense for PD. And I, for one, just genuinely believe we have not done that process and we are not there, and that there are commitments and expectations now that make it really hard to revert back. You have made, in my areas in the past, I've commented on are the cost. And I've always said the best value for the money. And I've given you some examples. I am really flummoxed by your cost estimates. It's your responsibility. And I can assure you, I'm going to make you redesign it for free if it comes in over budget. But I gave staff a very detailed list of questions of why your cost estimate didn't make sense to me. I hope they shared that with you. So in conclusion, from my point, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the council and any comments that you wish, is I know we need to move forward on this project. It is the right thing to do. We need to move forward, I hope, with some clear expectations and responsibilities of what you need to bring back that will help this project get back on track successfully for everyone. And my biggest fear is that 2 months from now, the cost estimate will come in over and we'll have to start all over again. And that is particularly a great concern because if we go to the design build model, which is highly likely given the entire situation and the best way to save time, what's going to happen? I haven't gotten a comfort level from your work that makes me, I'm doing what I think is very difficult to say and do right now, because I believe it's my responsibility to ask these tough questions, to point out these concerns, and make sure that as this project moves forward, the city gets the best project for the value of the dollar, and the PD gets the best building they can get for the money that they have. And with that, I will open it up to comments or additional comments from council.
Do we need public comments first?
That first, sure. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, we have Jeff Christina.
Fine, please join the discussion.
Thanks. I was waiting for a question there. Yeah, it sounds like Mayor Givens, it sounds like we agreed on a variety of things that were mentioned this evening. You know, is this the best use of the money? And you noted there's specific language constraints. I recognize that as well. I believe in the ballot measure, the specific language for PD was related to adapt to future needs. All the energy efficiency stuff was related only to the library in the ballot measure. But does this adapt to future needs? It doesn't. And Liz, you can look at the ballot measure. It's there. Also, you know, when we were originally talking about this, the lower level was intended to be for City Hall, and that PD was supposed to have its own building. And the main intent of that was because currently in City Hall, there's not enough space for existing staff as is. And so if we did the retrofitting and stuff like that, that I was arguing for, then we'd be able to get another 30 to 40 years out of that building and hopefully accommodate staff as it was. And that was another point that the mayor and I agree upon. But I don't believe that City Hall really needed the 10 million. If I'm not mistaken, from the old numbers, it was about 4.1. Calculate inflation and everything like that. That was the seismic retrofit, was about 1. If you put everything in, they need 6 to 8. So you could take a couple million off of them. You definitely don't need 20 million for the library. That's 100%. You know, you're looking at, as the chief said, the financial constraints that are coming around. And when you guys are going through the library you're creating with wish list issues. The library is going through very smoothly, very fluidly, and without any challenges financially compared to this. And why? It's not as important. It's not even nearly as important. Without police, no one goes to the library. And so you guys need to try and take a look at that and reevaluate exactly what you're doing, because just setting these numbers, these bars, does not meet the specific ballot language in regards to if they can adapt to future needs. Because if they're getting stuck in a building and they have such a small amount of square feet per person, as the city grows, and it will, even if this council continues to vote down different projects, they are going to need more people. That is just going to be how the world turns. And so we need to be able to accommodate that growth and the future needs. And I don't believe this council is really doing that. And it needs to be done relatively quickly because it's a necessity. Our police need to be out of the mobile homes. They need an actual home. And so let's give them that. That's why we passed this. Thanks for the time, everybody.
Thank you, past council member Jeff Christina. Are there any other public comments?
Yes, we have Diane Rock.
Yes, please.
Hi, this is Diane Rock. I am also wanting to comment on the police station, or the police station being able to move forward. I appreciated Jeff Christina's comments. I felt that he was right on target. It did seem rather arbitrary to just say that half was going to go to the to the library and half was going to go to the police department. When I voted for Measure O, I did anticipate that a new police station would probably eat up more than half the budget. And when we're listening to Chief Byrd talk about the amount of budget constraints as well as the developers looking at it and bringing up the budget constraints over and over again, it does seem that we have set an unreasonable bar for them. That if we want them to anticipate future needs and be able to build into that, that they need a reasonable budget. And so I think that what it is that we're asking of them in many cases can be addressed in the next phase. Much of what you, Mayor Gibbons, have brought up are things that do not affect this particular stage, but are things that would be determined in future stages. The energy modeling that you're discussing is not something that needs to be done right now. That is part of the concept, as are things like the awnings. Those are things that are so far down in a normal construction process. I think that we're trying to hold this part of the project up for things that really are not necessary and things that will be determined in later stages. So I do appreciate hearing you say that you do want to move forward with this. I urge the rest of the council to move forward as well and allow for the additional phases to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, do we have another?
We do not.
We do not, okay. Thank you. With that, I will close the public hearing and bring the discussion back.
You went on mute, Liz.
Did you hear any of that? I said thank you. And we'll bring the discussion back to council and or consultants. Whoever wants to say something. This is a dialogue to move the project forward. So who would like to say something? Councilmember Bybee.
Well, I'd just like to say that to me, the purpose of Measure O is to provide a library facility, an updated library facility, and a police facility that meets today's needs as well as future needs. And it was a $50 million budget. So we're constrained by the budget as it is, which was divided between the two facilities. We're also constrained by the Civic Center footprint. And realistically, in my view, there's not a whole lot of options in where you're going to put a new police facility. And so to me, the two options that have been presented through a variety of steps that the consulting team has gone through indicates that that is the best use of, or the best place for the new building, so that it works with the parking and the existing police facility. I was very disappointed initially when I found out that the City Hall, the existing police department, was going to be part of the new facility. But I understand the reason for it. I understand that we are constrained by the budget, and I understand that you can't have both. That you can't build the new building and have everything you want in it with what we have. So I feel that the staff and the project team have done their due diligence and have worked through a variety of site plans and a variety of options that they've brought to the council. And we have to live with what we've got. They've made compromises. And I think that we as a council need to take the action and move forward with it. I just feel that they've come up with two options that are workable, and that we should be making a decision and moving forward with it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments that have been made. I just, want to reiterate my earlier statement. I know we're all coming from a place of wanting this project to succeed. I know the members of the public who I thank for their comment are. I do appreciate the work that has gone back into presenting the second option. And I do see the feedback from various council members that was integrated into that. And, I want to be clear that if we, go forward with one of the two options, I'm still coming at it from a place that, we want to continue and will giving that feedback. And I've seen the flexibility. I've made comments to the effect of, I'd like to see with this concept how it integrates into the surroundings and public use. And I saw some of that reflected in the updated presentation. So, I feel that will continue to see that. Mayor Gibbons, many of the comments you made, I won't touch on them all, but very important. I brought up in my comments last time that I would like to see potential use of some of those funds from Silicon Valley Clean Energy, which could actually save us money, not add on to the cost of the project. So, I want to feel confident that we can continue to give input and refine and have some real alternatives as we move through the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I will summarize.
My hand's waving.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, I'm just going to reiterate that I really appreciate the work that you guys have done since the last time you came before us. Things aren't perfect yet, but I'm willing to move forward out of sake of cost savings to the schedule and all the other reasons to move forward. I will state that I prefer option 2, but I do like the ramp from option 1. The one thing that the ramp does is there is a little more inviting entry that seems like it's a little integrated better into the hillside, but I understand that you may want the ramp with the 3 switchbacks. I think the second floor exiting is much better than the cantilevered along the whole length. It does create a separation from a city employee going in. That's why I asked the question earlier about that. Let's see. So a couple things. Again, I'm not going to stop moving forward. I want this to move forward. So these are comments to consider during the design or the schematic design phase. On the north side of the option 2, the police get an outdoor workout area that is not in option 1 because of the driveway and the having to move it a little bit farther from the intersection. That's another reason why I like option 2 is the length of that road going in. Certainly option 2 makes better use of that space. So there's this outdoor courtyard shown. It's not labeled, but there's a long rectangle. And after talking to the chief, I understood what it is. I would like to see the building moved a little more north to get more of a grander entrance. And you may also be able to pick up the open parking that addresses some of Councilmember Gibbons' issues about how much the parking is used off hours, weekends and evenings. So also there's the long length along the west side that if that outdoor exercise area were moved over to the west side, then that does allow you to move the building a little more north, and it does break up the length of the building by having that. I am a little concerned, or actually concerned, about the encroachment of those 3 parking spaces on the east side of the building. When you look at the site plan I don't have page numbers here, but the site plan, oh, here. They're all the black buildings. It shows that fence line encroaching on the half circle of the walkway. So I think those 3 extra spaces should be evaluated. And it could be something like, again, just a suggestion, maybe the emergency generator moves to the west side, again, to help break up the length of that building. Let's see, I wrote down. So if the building moves north, I'll just summarize by about 5 feet. The exercise outdoor moves to the west side. We might be able to gain 2, 3, maybe 4 parking spaces in the open lot that right now is where visitor parking is. And I think that would help. Let's see here. I'm still concerned about the motorcycle spaces inside the building. I think we do not have fire sprinklers in the building right now. I'm concerned about the fumes and the flammability potential with the gas under the within the building, and that there's employees up above. So if nothing else, if they stay inside the building, it looks like we're going to have to put sprinklers, fire sprinklers in there. The parking analysis, I don't think addressed some of the things that the mayor was talking about. I'm concerned that the library parking lot is giving too much parking to the library and not enough parking for employee parking, because the more employee parking we can get over on that side gives us more of the visitor spaces in the whatever the lot is called in front of the city hall. Let's see, you answered that question. So I really appreciate the work that you guys did. I felt like I was kind of being picky, but the council has 2 jobs for us to do regarding this. One is to be accountable to the voters. And by doing that is looking at the budget, critically assessing where the money's being spent. And the other important job that we have is to make sure that by adding this building and renovating the library, that it works as a whole for the entire city. And so coming from that perspective, I would say, look at those 2. Are we accountable to the voters? Have we pinched every penny? Have we looked at things that maybe are superfluous, like the large courtyard overhang? I'm not want to get stuck on that, but we need to be accountable to the budget, and we need to make sure it works better as a city as a whole. So I support option 2 for all the reasons that I stated. I see some minor modifications. I see those 3 parking spaces on the east side of the building are really encroaching into the orchard green. There's a lot of trees that are come out, but I also see a balance of what the police department needs. And I do agree that the employees, especially in the evening, that they need secured parking. Times have changed, and there is a lot of concern about safety of people, of police officers and whoever else walking out to their car, especially in the evening. So at that, I'll leave it at that. But I want to really emphasize my thank you to staff and to the consultant for really solving some of the issues that I had raised before.
Okay, and I'll give you my concluding comments. One is, just FYI, Councilwoman Landry, the library parking lot is contractually obligated to the library. The city cannot use it.
I understand, but there are more spaces than the allotted contract amount.
No,
I won't get into it with you, but okay.
So don't, it's not a simple question. I think there's a lot more opportunity to find other locations for the building with even with the footprint you have. The fact that the police station is, I'm sorry to disagree with Chief Berg, is not a public-friendly building. It's a massive wall. The entry is down a full floor, and it's only accessible through ramps. I would think people in our building would be sick and tired of ramps. To have a design solution that utilizes ramps, I'm sorry, I don't see that as being, we all know how terrible ramps have been over the years. So I just think the ramp concept is very problematic. I highly question the best dollar value. The canopy, the private police-only deck, the fact that the building is roughly 17,000 square feet on the ground floor and 10,000 on the second floor, that automatically adds money. If just say what can go on the second floor, can the EOC go on the second floor? That would help reduce the footprint of the building, give much more flexibility, and be much more cost effective. The seismic relationship of that dissimilar building plan that you have is as a cost implication. Is that the best use of our money? I just think the PD is not public friendly. It looks like a fortress, and I think it's inappropriate for the PD building to dominate the city hall and all the public functions that the majority of our citizens come to city hall for, to take that parking lot and make it in essence a police parking lot, not a public parking lot for all public services on the campus there. I think that there was very strict requirements for respecting the Orchard City Green and the Ainsley House, and that cannot go forward. I think there's an obligation to comply with the scope in the project, which I do not believe has been met. And I hesitate to pick an option because I think there's so much better out there. I think it was too easy to do what was said at our meeting on January 11th. We just did whatever our client wanted, we just did whatever PD wanted. I think that's a disservice to your professional skills to make those statements. And that was made 3 times on the 11th. I mean, you have to move forward. I mean, there's no choice but to move forward. But I would hope that although I'm a lone voice on many things, I think I have standing in terms of the contractual requirements and standing in terms of what's the right way to spend the voters' money and what's the right thing to do for the city in the long term. And I hope when you come back with 15% schematic, the way the contract reads, at least unless I have an older version, that these challenges and loose ends are addressed. I would ask you to do that, but I'm only one voice. Yes, Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. I wanted to add on something that I think you touched on, but that I meant to make in my earlier comments. I suggested at the meeting in January, looking at making the second floor building plan, the square footage match up with the first one. My understanding is the reason why that choice was made is not because we're obligated, but potentially better align with the neighborhood. I would be interested in, as we continue to move forward, looking, seeing whether we can better make use of the potential square footage there, and whether that would save on costs if we can move around some of the uses that we have otherwise. But that would just be my comment. I think that's an important option that I don't want to leave on the table.
Thank you. And I guess I would say, please do read the bond measure and the description that went along with the bond measure. And I would offer, just as a comment to conclude, is that the city council made decisions last year that split the projects between the library and PD into two separate projects. And the council made decisions which split the budget, and contracts have been let based on that. And the library board district has made commitments to do several things. They have added, I don't remember, $700,000 to the construction budget of their own money. They have allowed, you could tell me? They have also agreed to a smaller interim facility to save another $1 million to put back into the facility. And they have also done a smaller footprint of the building. So a lot of thought has gone into all of that, and the council worked through that successfully the last time. And I'm sure we can work successfully through this at this point. Anything else? Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I think some very, very good input tonight. And I think if we could just, I think it was clear that we have consensus to move forward into the schematic phase. We heard from Councilmember Landry a preference for the second option with some comments to go with that, which I think were helpful. But if there's any preferences from Councilmember Bybee or Lopez, that would be helpful as well, so that we can zero in on one of the options, again, with some caveats if necessary.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, so I'm happy to speak to that. Strong preference at this point between the two options for option two, but I think second or third the comments that have been made as to encroaching on the green and the pathway. I don't see that as a viable option.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bybee.
My preference is option one, but I'm willing to move forward with option two if that's the consensus of the council. It does achieve some more additional public parking, so that would, address some of the issues that have been discussed. And I would concur with the comments that Councilwoman Landry made about some of the ramp improvement or ramp design from option one.
Thank you. So if I could ask Jeremy, is there anything additional, any questions that we would need answered tonight to make our next 6 to 8 weeks the most effective?
No questions for council tonight. Certainly have a lot of questions and work that we need to do to get back to gain the trust of everyone on the council. So we will be back with responses to everything we've heard tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for everything you've done to get us to this point, and we look forward to a successful project. And we'll see you when? When's the next time we're supposed to see you?
We're hoping for early May, and again, that's to come back with the direction that we've moved in on the schematic design. That hopefully will be to talk about the environmental assessment and also have a good discussion about the project delivery method.
So I would offer you one friendly word, which is communication is the key to success. You've got a lot on your plate from me. I'd hesitate to have you get all the way there without better communication.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Do we get a woohoo on this one, guys? We got one on the library. Are we at woohoo yet?
Okay. We aren't done yet, but we are done yet. Do we have, are we ready to let the council committee reports go? and end our meeting, or does anyone wish to say anything? Welcome back, Ms. Mayor.
I'm sorry, I'll make one comment. I went to the Valley Water meeting, and most of the discussion was around water rate increases and a decision on farmland. And they had a question of 15% or 10% cost savings for farmland. And Mike Wasserman and I also made the comment that we need to preserve our farmland. We need to keep our produce and stuff here. And we recommended the 25% cost savings, but there will be from the purveyor a water increase that then trickles down to the water companies. So heads up on that.
Okay, I'll forego any comments. I'll just simply say we continue to have meetings every Saturday morning with Supervisor Chavez and Supervisor Simidian on the COVID rollout and efforts by the Santa Clara County. And the Santa Clara County is doing very well with their vaccinations and appointments. And they have two new web pages. I think we said the first one was the Silicon SCC freevax.org. And then also they have added a page to the dashboard, which shows where the vaccines have been distributed. Kaiser continues to be the laggard and having serious problems with that. And other than that, I'm sure there's something else, but I'll remember next time. Yes, Councilmember, Vice Mayor Resnikoff.
I think Councilmember Bybee beat me to it, so.
So sorry?
Councilmember Bybee, I think, was ahead of me.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I was going to defer to you and have you report on the Finance Subcommittee meeting that we attended.
Okay. It's funny on my list, I forgot that one. So we attended the Finance Subcommittee, and actually we met with the auditors, and the auditors came in and gave a very good report on what was going on, not only in the financials being clean, but in the relationship with management. And having not been on this committee for a few years, I know in the past, there were minor issues and stuff that were addressed, and this time there were none. So to Director Fuentes and his team, as we told them there, they did a great job. So to be commended. Anything I missed on that one, or? Okay, and secondly, I just want to add, I did my my return to SAVAC. I had done 3 years and was gone for 3 years. Much like my first year there, 6 years ago, I became vice chair in the first meeting. They've had a lot of turnover. I would just like to point out that they're still doing a great job. The 6-month stats of July through December of 2020. Live release rates for dogs and cats each is 99%.
Wow.
That's phenomenal because 90% is no kill. They are responsible for putting down vicious animals by court order, injured animals that might be hit by a car and brought in, or animals that people tend to dump there when they want them euthanized, and they still reach 99%, which is absolutely incredible. This week is solid waste and clean water. And my understanding is solid waste is reaching out to management to speak to all the 4 JPA cities about 1383 coming up. They just want to give everybody a few minutes of more detail because, as I've mentioned before, there are going to be some very strict guidelines, and that's going to increase costs. And people are going to be unhappy about it, but we are to be compliant with the state. So yeah, the anger will be misplaced because we have to adhere to state laws.
Yeah, and Vice Mayor, I was told that there's a lot of impact on city facilities. The city facilities are all going to have to be remodeled to comply. So there's a big expense of the cities.
And one of the problems on the cities is going to be that for especially the commercial properties and restaurants and such, the city is responsible for that compliance. So the city has to show they have the processes in place to monitor this and get these programs through. The city is on the hook, if the businesses don't adhere. That's problematic, but that's just the way it is. So that's going to be an infrastructure problem.
Okay, anything else?
So I have,
All righty. I think we all participated in the city clerk interviews. So we're making progress there. And I know there's something else, but we'll go from there. All right, here's to having our next regularly scheduled meeting on February 16th, I think. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.